Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. Apologies, first of all, that there was a delay in this series. I just haven't been feeling very good the last couple of days. So apologies to Lloyd and apologies to all the viewers who are waiting for part 3. Two small disclaimers. I'm still not feeling absolutely optimal, so I have just kind of popped 2 paracetamol and I will try and plow through this because I'm really eager to kind of get moving on this series as well. But yeah, I just want to say sorry if I'm not on top form today, but we have Lloyd with us and he is always on top form. And then just before we get into it again, for whoever's watching, feel free to ask questions as the presentation is going ahead. If there's any certain bits of information that you just want clarifying or you have a follow-up question to, we're more than happy to entertain it. But please also make sure you keep your comments and questions relevant to the topic at hand in the exact same way that we discussed last time. So yeah, welcome everybody to part 3. And without further ado, I will be bringing Lloyd on to join us. Lloyd, hi, welcome, and thank you for being here again, and apologies for Tuesday.
No worries. No, thank you. I think everyone was. I noticed your audience was missing you greatly on Tuesday.
Well, to
So
you as well. I'm sure everybody was looking forward to part 3, so I made sure people had well in advance notice for this session. But no, thank you so much for being flexible with us.
no, you're most welcome. No, I'm actually grateful to you for having me on. So I do appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you. So again, we thought that today we're going to do the, 2-hour stint and get through as much of the presentation as we can. If we happen to take certain tangents and things come up, we will go into that as much as we can while bearing in mind time and, always looking to do follow-up videos on certain topics that really do interest people. So Thunderous, welcome. Hello to everybody. And RC, welcome on this is your first time here. Welcome. And I hope you enjoy what we are about to unpack. So yeah, Lloyd, once again, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you. So let me get my screen sharing going. Okay.
Sure.
So yeah. So just briefly then, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Just go. For those who missed the previous ones, and also just to bring everyone up to speed. Very briefly, we're going to be looking at archaeology, history, language, as well as Islamic sources. And we're going to be working on tracing what are the roots, what are the parallels, what are the echoes within early Arabia that led to the development of Islam. It didn't develop in a vacuum, so clearly there was historical antecedents that led to the growth of Islam. Now, I will state, and I did show from the last show, and please comment and and add your own thoughts as we go ahead, Nuria. But
Sure.
do understand that Islamic law, the Sharia, which I showed last week, does explicitly state that Islam is a Gnostic religion. So its basis is Gnosticism. However, prior to that development, we have been showing that it is based upon early Arabian paganism. And then prior to that, that paganism is based on Babylonian moon god worship.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me jump
And
ahead
sorry,
again.
just real
Yes.
quick, Lloyd, just to stop you there. I just want to remind people that this is exactly why I've kind of chosen to delve into this a bit more, because coming from just being a Muslim myself, and when you're so heavily in that faith, and you consider everything to be eternal, timeless, and the word of God, now stepping outside of that, because I can look at it, as an ex-Muslim, and I can see without the rose-tinted glasses, it does really make sense how this is just a different mishmash and conjugation of history unfolding from the various regions where we are told Islam started. So for me, that's a massive reason underpinning why we're looking into this as well. And it's extraordinary, Lloyd. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just dropped a private comment to you with a link to my research archive, which people can look at and download. It's about 14 gigabytes of files, and the references folder is the one that they want. I'm using about 60 different academic papers, books, and resources on this one. And also, just so everyone knows, You can download this. Everything is available to you for your own reference. And I do see the constant accusation that I'm just copying and pasting from Wikipedia. If that is the case, just please paste me the Wikipedia pages that I'm using, just so you can prove that statement. But no, I'm utilizing a lot of scientific data that's based on academic papers for this, and everything has been made available to you. Okay, guys, so we ended up on this slide, so I'll just pick up where we left off.
Okay, and just
So,
sorry, real quick
yeah.
before you start, I'm going to post that link with the resources, as Lloyd was mentioning, in the chat, but I'm also going to add it to the description afterwards. So once people, if you're not watching it live and you're watching this later, feel free to, as Lloyd said, go and validate all of these claims and send him Wikipedia links that you think he has copy and pasted from. So it is in the chat, and as Lloyd said, feel free to go ahead and download it. It's pinned here now, and I will be adding it afterwards as well.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Thanks. So that's the short URL, and I've also sent you the long one. It's a Google Drive. I especially took out a Google Drive account where I can store all of this. It's over 1,200 documents that I'm using, and also I'm using professional desktop search software which indexes all of my files, and I can then search through them professionally. Okay, so thanks for putting the URL up. All right, guys, so we're going to speak now about Burak. Burak is very important to Islam, and we've also learned last week that the very first references to Burak come not from the 6th century, but come from a poem or poet much later than Muhammad, at least a century after Muhammad lived. And also the very first references to Burak are with regards to Abraham. And we'll see now briefly that all of the early references to Burak, or to a concept of Burak, comes from mysticism, comes from Jewish folklore, from Jewish mystical stories. Okay. Hi, Trevor. Welcome, John. Thank you for being here. Hi, Thundress. So let's continue. Very briefly, Burak has multiple names. Barack, as in Barack Obama. Borak, which is a mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse. Okay, so
Bloody hell.
Yeah. So the early Islamic scholars seem to have a problem defining what this thing was. So so there we have that. Now it's the conveyance of Muhammad from Mecca to Al-Aqsa, and of course they had to explain how Muhammad within a single day could visit Rebecca. Could visit his son Ishmael basically in Mecca while traveling all the way from near Jerusalem, right? So that's 1,200 kilometers one way. So they had to say, well, he simply flew on the Burak there and back in a single day, because obviously this is geographically, historically, I mean, this just it makes no sense. Okay, so the Burak will carry Mo on Judgment Day, apparently, and also it carried Abraham when he wanted to carry Hajar and Ismail to Mecca. Right, and some narrations in Islam said was his conveyance on all his travel to Mecca. Okay, so let's jump ahead. So now we'll go have a look at some of these mystical literature within Islam, which discusses the Burak. So you have the lion, the Burak, the white falcon, the royal phoenix, and Duldul. Duldul is the mule
Elephant?
of Muhammad.
Oh, the mule. Okay.
Yeah, that's Muhammad's little white mule or something like that. There are 5 creatures that sit in 5 trees in the first, and Burak comes from the light of Muhammad. So according to the mystical literature, the Burak is actually made out of Muhammad's light. Now, if you read
Which
the Sirah,
was always in existence, I'm guessing. That's how Abraham was able to make use of the Burak.
Yes, if you read the Sirah, which are supposedly the biographies of Muhammad, but really are the Gospels of Muhammad, then you find that the light of Muhammad, so Allah takes a piece of himself, takes a piece of his light, and he shapes Muhammad. And Muhammad is in existence before the earth was created. And then Muhammad is told by Allah, I am going to make the earth and the universe for you. So Allah makes the universe for Muhammad. He makes the earth for Muhammad. And then he makes the earth, and the entire earth for him is a place of prayer. So he needs to dominate the entire earth. And
that word
Muhammad,
of light that's used there, sorry, is that the same word that's Nur, which is the moonlight, or is there a different word for
it'll be
light
the Nur.
use?
Yeah, he's always referred to as the Nur, the moonlight.
Okay.
To my knowledge, yes, all the references I've seen are to the Nur. So Muhammad is moonlight, which obviously moon god, moonlight.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course what happens is all of the prophets, like for instance, all of the prophets and all of the saints and all of the holy people are made from the light of Muhammad. So in other words, Allah then takes a piece of Muhammad, makes Adam, he takes another piece of Muhammad's light, he makes Noah, he makes Abraham, he makes David, he makes Jesus, and all of the saints and all of the prophets are made literally from and their holiness is the light of Muhammad that's shining from them. So they contain a
Wow.
piece of
Okay.
Muhammad. Yeah, that's what's in the literature of Ba'ath Muhammad. And notice here, an eagle is perched on the tree of knowledge in paradise, according to the secret book of John. These are, and the Gospel of Thomas is also referenced, and Manichaean literature. This is Gnostic literature. In Islamic tradition, Borak is the winged horse on which Prophet Muhammad rode on his night journey, and Duldul is Muhammad's white mule. So this poem, this little discussion here, this is all based on Gnostic Gospels. The Gnostic Gospels, generally in this case, will be derived from the book of Enoch.
Right. Okay.
Right. So you can generally trace all of these back to the book of Enoch somewhere. And then, of course, you have Sirius. Okay. Now, remember, we mentioned earlier that Allah is the Lord of Sirius. Sirius was one of the offspring of one of the children of the sun and the moon having a child. Right. Allah is the Lord of Sirius in the Quran. And one of the names of Sirius is Barak-ish, the one of many colors.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. And of course, Burak was either white or had the perfect colors. Now, the star Sirius is the star of perfect colors, the star of many colors. Right. So you'll see different references as we go around.
And Lloyd, sorry,
of course,
just real quick as well. When just to go on to the light of Muhammad thing that we were talking about. So essentially, the way you're saying it's described in the seerah there is basically, I mean, he's given almost divine status, right? That everything is kind of emanating from him. He's almost part of their creation. So just a quick question here. RC saying, can I know which version of the seerah that mentions about the origins of Muhammad like a semi-divine being? If possible, because that's what I'm starting to, I was starting to pick up on that as well. You're coming very close to associating him with Allah, and that seems almost indistinguishable.
Yeah. Okay. So hold on. So let me just briefly run into this. We'll find out. Let me give you an answer. It's not the entire answer, but it's enough to get us going. So let me find this. Okay, I will give you a link to this particular database as well. This is online. It is shared publicly. So everything I have here is available to you. So I'll make this link available as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk briefly from Shahrastani. Okay, this is a very, very important scholar called Shahrastani in Islam. And he talks about, we're going to talk about the light of creation, Muhammad being the light of creation So in Shahrastani, you have the book of sects and creeds, the book of religious communities and sectarian creeds called the Milal wa Nihal. Okay, and Shahrastani tells us the general idea is that long before the creation of the world, Allah took a ray of light from the splendor of his own glory and united it to the body of Muhammad.
Wow.
And then he said to Muhammad, Muhammad, thou art the elect, the chosen. I will make the members of thy family the guides to salvation. Now, don't forget, in the Bible, this is exactly what God says to Abraham. So now these words are attributed to Muhammad. And Muhammad said the first thing which Allah created was my light and my spirit.
Wow. It's almost pretty much lifted and just applied to Muhammad.
Correct. Now,
almost verbatim,
then you've got this. Yeah, no, exactly. So I'll give you another reference here. So from S.W. Kurla, Muhammad and Mohammedanism, in a chapter called Muhammad, a Parody of Christ. Okay. And this is common across multiple of these seerah. I mean, I'll give you guys a link. Now, if you go to the Google archive link that I showed you, go to the Islam folder and then go to the seerah folder, the Sirat, S-I-R-A-T. You'll find there's about 50 different seerat in there, or biographies of Muhammad. You can then download and you can search through those. Okay. So Muhammad, the Muhammad of pre-existence, was created of divine light. When he had stood as a column of light before Allah for 1,000,000 years in primordial adoration, Allah created Adam from the light of Muhammad. Okay. Well, according to another tafsir, he created Adam from the clay of divine might, from the light of Muhammad, from the Min Nur Muhammad. You see, the light of Muhammad. Adam is formed from Muhammad's light, but the whole universe participates in this emanation of light. In other words, the light of the world is Muhammad, the light of the sun. The light of the throne room of Allah is Muhammad's light. In fact, the arsh, which Allah sits on, that light that emanates from it is the light of Muhammad. So the light of the prophets is from Muhammad's light, and the light of the heavenly kingdom, the malakut, is from his light. And the light of this world, the dunya, and of the light of the world to come is from his light.
So absolutely everything.
Oh yeah. It
including
goes,
God's throne, including Allah's throne on his arsh.
Correct. The light that lights up Allah's throne is the light of Muhammad. In the Kitabi Akhwal al-Qiyamat, read the following. It is recorded by tradition that Allah first created a tree with 4,000 branches. He called it the tree of life. Then Allah created the light of Muhammad in a veil of white pearl on the shape of a peacock, and he placed it upon that tree where the light of Muhammad praised Allah for 70,000 years. However, then we go on. Okay. Then, of course, you have the ulamas, the martyrs, the righteous, and the Kaaba, and so on. The Temple of Jerusalem. And then of the perspiration of his eyebrows, Allah created the people of the Muslims, of believing men and women, the Muslims. Okay. So from
the perspiration of his eyebrows.
Yes, Nuria, I'm sorry to share this with you.
Oh my goodness.
And then of the perspiration of its ears. So basically what he does is so Muhammad is taken. Okay, so they make this pillar of light, which is Muhammad, and then they shape a statue in the shape of Muhammad, and then this light is transferred into the statue. And then Muhammad becomes this lamp, this light. And this template of Muhammad exists in heaven until Allah is ready to send Muhammad down to earth. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And I think this might be referring to the statue of Muhammad. I'm not sure if it's Allah himself or Muhammad's statue. And then of the perspiration of its ears, Allah created the spirits of the Jews, the Christians, the Magi, and so on. Okay, and after this, when the light of Muhammad had praised Allah for 70,000 years, Allah created the light of the prophets out of the light of Muhammad. And they said, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. Then Allah created a lamp and the figure of Muhammad, just as he afterwards was in this world. And then the spirits of heaven, we're talking the angels, the archangels, all the spirits of heaven, went around the light of Muhammad, praising and worshipping Muhammad for 100,000 years.
Okay.
Then Allah commanded the spirits to look upon the form of Muhammad, and they all obeyed. And who saw his head became a caliph and a sultan amongst men. Who saw Muhammad's forehead became a just commander. Who saw his eyes became one who knows the word of Allah by heart. And those who saw nothing became a Jew, a Christian, an infidel, and a magician.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So notice Allah praised Muhammad. So Muhammad praised Allah for 70,000 years, but all of heaven and all the souls were yet to be born, and all the creatures of heaven and all the angels and everything worshiped Muhammad for longer than Muhammad worshipped Allah.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And did it say anything here about the jinns? Did they also worship him before they?
That would be separate. I'm busy doing some research on that, but I've just got a full plate. I have some notes on that. I bought a book on that, which I'm busy reading. But the jinn feature very heavily in ancient Arabia, and they feature very heavily in the culture. So yes, there must be something like that.
Okay, awesome. Trevor was asking, he was saying this is mental, Lloyd. It's hilariously funny. But he was asking before as well, do normal Muslims know this, or is it only a chosen few? Just to give my little 2 cents, I don't know any practicing Muslim or any Muslim around me that truly, because they believe, but they have no idea about the depths of this. And this is exactly why I wanted to platform this even more, so this information is spread far and wide with these resources that Lloyd is saying. But yeah, Lloyd, do you think Muslims know this, or is it the select few?
I think Western Muslims probably are less knowledgeable than Eastern Muslims from Arabia. That would be my thinking. I think that they realize that this information, they cannot prove it. They realize it looks like plagiarism from other religious resources. So I suspect they keep very quiet about it. The Sirah is something they hide, just like they hide the Sharia, the laws. They also hide the Sirah. They're very quiet about it. The scholars obviously know this. And this is if it's not known explicitly, it's often known implicitly. Some of it seems to be known, at least from my interactions. And a lot of Islamic beliefs are derived from this. So these beliefs are implicitly based upon this knowledge.
And as Lloyd mentioned last time, sorry, go ahead.
Go on, please. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, because the hierarchy almost that you alluded to in one of the earlier streams of how that knowledge is kind of held right at the top, and most of the lay Muslims at the bottom aren't even privy to a lot of these sources. And obviously now with the internet, things are changing, but there was naturally this covert kind of information kept by the scholars and the ulama, right?
Sorry, I just missed the last bit you said. Sorry, could you say that again?
No, I was just alluding to, that you were saying that information at the top was almost covert and just held for the ulemas, and I forgot the exact word in Arabic, but usual lay Muslims, especially Western progressive Muslims, they are more than stuck at the bottom level. Was it Ibarra, I think the word was?
Ibara, Ishara, Lataif, Hakaik on top. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So effectively, what they've done is they've given Muhammad all of the characteristics of Jesus. So he becomes this replacement Jesus. So yes, that's exactly. He becomes part of Allah. In fact, he literally is a part of Allah. So therefore, this is shirk.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first thought that came into my head. This is basically shirk at this point. He's the light of Muhammad and Muhammad's divinity almost is so intertwined with Allah and his nur and his creation of whether it's prophets, his throne, anything. Muhammad, it doesn't exist without Muhammad.
Yeah, I should mention Jojo Freelancer KUP is in the chat. He deleted all of his comments on the last video. He lied to me about being a Muslim. He came on to attack Christianity, and the discussion is not about Christianity, but about Islam. So he started attacking the Bible, started attacking Christianity, and then I went and looked him up online. I discovered he's a Muslim that posts on Muslim forums, and his comments are all over. And as part of this process, what he does is he criticizes Islam, I think, to make it look as if he's not a Muslim. But he's got all
Right.
sorts of inshallahs all over the place. So this is not an uncommon tactic. So Jojo Freelancer is now criticizing Islam to look like an atheist, but go and look up that name on Google. You'll find he's a Muslim and he posts on Muslim forums and he's pro-Allah and pro-Quran all over the place.
Oh,
So,
thank you, Lloyd, for bringing that to our attention.
yep, and he's deleted all of his comments. If you go to the chat, you'll find I have a lot of responses to him and he's deleted all of his comments because once I found him out, he removed all of his comments from the threads.
Okay, wow.
So to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so let's continue. So, for instance, there is a place called Barak-ish, which is a sanctuary called in Yemen, again near Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Okay, so understand. So now you've got this, and of course, it's just like the Meccan Haram. So this is just like the Kaaba. So now you've got another reference to Barak, just near Sana'a, right? So now, for instance, we go to, now if you look at the Jews, they've got Barak El. This is in their mysticism as well. And the name is appropriate for the one whose appearance is like that of lightning. See the first book of Enoch. The book of Enoch is not considered canon because it contradicts the Bible extensively. And there is one quote in Jude, for instance, that supposedly references Enoch, but that same quote is also found in another source. So it's not necessarily taken from Enoch. But the book of Enoch is not considered canon. It plagiarizes the Bible and it's got lots of historical errors. It also makes scientific claims, which cannot be proven, just very much like you'd see in the Quran. So although the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawhid Church, technically it should be called the Ethiopian Enoch because they consider Enoch canon. And don't forget, Muhammad was very closely associated with the Ethiopians. So this is where he would have gotten this information because they revered Enoch. And of course, you get the Qumran Book of Giants from the Manichaeans, who are a Gnostic sect. And of course, and they would have taken this from the Jewish mysticism, who speak of Barak El, lightning. And this is Jewish law, which has been stolen by these Gnostics, right?
Wow.
Then, of course, you've got the seven angels of heaven. Barak El is one of them. Okay, and this is also taken from Enoch, which is taken from Jewish mysticism. Then if you continue, Al-Barkai, Barak, just another form, Barak. So if you go back to the original sources of the Jewish mysticism, they speak of Abraham's light at Hebron, and the whole east is bright as far as Hebron, because Abraham was this light to the world, right? And have we learned to imitate Abraham? Yes, of course, we've learned to imitate Abraham. So Muhammad says, well, hey, that's a great idea. Why shall we not imitate Abraham? And also, it's a reference to Abraham rose up early in the morning. Abraham's the light. So it looks like it's a corruption of one of these ideas. Al-Barkai, the light has risen. Muhammad has risen. Muhammad rose up on Barak, lightning. So this is entirely taken from Jewish mysticism, distorted through the Gnostics.
Right. Okay. Is the and like the story, the embellishment of the Islamic story, for example, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the wingspan of the Buraq was like in like one wing flap, it could traverse like half the earth or something crazy. Is that? Do you think that's also pulled, or was he just using that and then embellishing the story on his own terms, just in your own personal opinion?
Probably, I'm not certain.
Okay.
Just a final word on Jojo Freelancer. If you do read through some of the statements he makes on some of these comments, he is a very strange Muslim. He makes some statements that are clearly his own interpretation, shall we say, of Islam. That's the last thing I'll say on that. But I did catch him trying to deceive me, so I'll leave it at that. Okay, then you see barak, lightning flash. Now notice it also occurs in the Sabaean. The Sabaeans, remember the Sabaeans where Muhammad copied his moon worship religion from? They also have it. It's called barak in the Sabaean language. So they also copied the idea of barak. So which means that because the Sabaean religion was very similar to Islam as we know today, and it's also in the Palmyrene called barak, it's in the Punic, it's in the Assyrian as well. So multiple other religions, pagan religions, also had the barak, right? And then I just want to mention briefly the Battle of Badr. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, not Wikipedia. Okay. So notice Israel suffered at the hands of the enemy. The caravan roads were in danger. Traffic almost seized. The cultivated country was plundered. Now remember, Muhammad was effectively a pirate. He was plundering.
Plunderer, looter.
Now, I think they've just turned this story around a little bit. Now, notice Barak accompanies Deborah. Okay. And so she now needs to save the tribes of Israel from this enemy. And under the heavy rainfall, the alluvial plain became like a morass in which the heavy armed troops found it impossible to move. Soon the stream Kishon was filled with chariots, horses, and Canaanites and Barak. And then they attack these Canaanites and kill them. Now, if you look at the Battle of Badr, there's a heavy rain. And of course, everything turns to mud, and the horses can't move. And then of course, the Meccans are able to defeat these. Then the Muslims are able to defeat the Meccans using almost identical story.
Yeah,
it's just very interesting. An almost identical story, and you've got a character called Barak.
Yeah,
in the same
exactly.
story. It's just very odd. I just thought I'd make a mention.
Very uncanny. Yeah. And also, sorry, Thunderous was saying that Greek mythology has a Barak called Pegasus. Whenever I would try and understand the story of the Mirage as a Muslim, the only thing I could conjure up in my head was Pegasus for the Barak. But Lloyd's description of how many other things it was is interesting because, as you said, the early Islamic scholars definitely couldn't decide on exactly what it was. But somebody made a good point as well. Somebody was saying, do you think there's a reason that the Barak had a female head?
I don't know. I haven't looked that deeply into it. No, I have no idea.
It definitely sanctioned that punch that the Barak got to its face. I will say that. It makes that all the more believable.
So let's continue. So Abraham built the Kaaba. Okay, so now narrated Abu Dar. I said, O Allah's messenger, which mosque was built first? And he replied, Al-Masjid al-Haram. I asked which was built next. He replied, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, Jerusalem. So first the Kaaba in Mecca, and then the Grand Mosque in Jerusalem. And I asked, what was the period in between them? And he replied, 40 years. Right? This is in Da'if Bukhari, volume 4, book 55, hadith 636.
Yeah, Da'if Bukhari never gets old.
Sorry, because it's true. Okay, so this is where the Christian era begins, right? Then King Solomon builds the Temple of Jerusalem in approximately 957 BC. This is generally the accepted date, more or less a few years. It's very hard to pin it down precisely, right? Then according to the 7th century Muhammad, right here, the Kaaba is built 40 years prior. This would place it at roughly 1000 BC.
Yeah.
Right? So the Kaaba is built according to Muhammad, right? In Da'if Bukhari.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Abraham was born, give or take. I mean, this is again 1800 BC, and he dies 1625 BC. So there's a 600-year gap at the very minimum. So now notice the Kaaba. Remember, we are told that Abraham built the Kaaba in Mecca when he took Hajar. When he took Hajar there, so he built it in 1800, except it was built in 1000 BC. Understand? There's a little bit of a I don't know.
Yeah, for real.
So it looks like Muhammad couldn't get his facts straight. So Muhammad said this is when the Kaaba was built. But of course, and what the scholars have to say is no. Abraham rebuilt it. It was built by Adam. Okay, there's some evidence, and Adam's skeleton is right next to the Kaaba. Right? Skeleton. Prove us that, you'll prove Islam immediately. Of course, they don't do that. They avoid that. They will not answer anything when I ask that question.
And I don't know if this is another way that they challenge that, but Siraj Haq is saying he didn't say 40 years, he just said 40. I'm pretty sure I've read years as well when I've read that hadith.
Well, the scholars apparently
the years is added in brackets. Okay.
Yeah. Well, of course, the scholars are telling us 40 years. This is Bukhari. This is Imam Bukhari, right? And also, I don't think people are aware, but Imam Bukhari, because his writing is so good, because Imam Bukhari was so trustworthy. Do you know that Imam Bukhari literally worked miracles?
Yes.
Okay. Bukhari actually did miracles. He was a miracle worker. He was gifted the ability to do miracles. This is in the Islamic sources as well. This is how trustworthy he is, how holy he was. He could do miracles.
Wow. Okay. Is that actually written in the text that he
Yes,
himself is?
yes, yeah, that's
Wow.
written. I'm not going to jump into that
I
now,
mean,
but
just the
Bukhari
power of
actually.
how much he had to memorize as well, and how much from within that he memorized and realized this is accurate. And how many there was like how many thousands of hadith that he cast
So
aside?
Bukhari apparently sifted through 660,000 hadith,
Some, yeah.
and he came out with like 7,345 or something, 7,366, which are the Sahih. However, people
Mm.
don't realize that he's written many other books, which are not just the Sahih. He's actually written other books which are non-Sahih. He's also got all of the other classifications in other books, which have not been translated because those are, let's say, somewhat more embarrassing potentially.
Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah. So of course now Idlebreaker is here to spout his
Mhm.
nonsense. However, if Adam is buried next to the Kaaba, along with up to 300 living prophets whose bodies are preserved by Allah, so that they're buried, but their bodies are preserved and they are buried with an attitude of prayer. Idle, if you can show us the body of the body of 300 prophets and a 36-meter tall skeleton of Adam next to the Kaaba, buried next to the Kaaba, use radar, find us the proof, you will prove Islam like that immediately, no questions asked. So please do provide us this evidence, which according to your scholars, Adam and 300 of the prophets of the Bible are buried next to the Kaaba. You will prove Islam immediately. Now let's see you dance around and make excuses about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I would take the Shahada if that turns out to be true.
All right. Yeah. So again, jump in. Of course, now he's. Oh, yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about old maps. So now we're going to go into something called Makoraba. It's one of the very slim Hail Marys that these guys try to use to prove that Mecca existed in the past. Okay. And we
Okay.
need to debunk that, and we need to try and find where Mecca was originally. So we need to define not only where Mecca was, but what Mecca was.
True.
Okay. So let's look at some old maps. This, as you can see, is not Google Maps. Right.
Mhm.
Also, old maps were very incomplete. In fact, this is a pretty good map compared to some of the older maps. I mean, this is actually pretty good. And they used different coordinate systems. And here you've got Ethiopia, sub-Egypto. Basically, anything below Egypt was just called Ethiopia.
Right.
That was okay. Notice you've got the Saraceni up here, the Saracens, the Saracens. Okay, the destitute
Mhm.
of Sarah. These are the ones
Mhm.
abandoned by Sarah, right?
Okay.
So they were born of Hagar. They were abandoned by Sarah, Abraham's wife. Then up here, notice what's written over there. Can you see this word here?
Yeah. Not
The,
very clearly though. Into the
the
sea,
one here.
right?
This one
Yeah.
is the Sabai, the Sabaeans.
Oh, okay. Oh,
This is
yes, I
where
see
Mecca
that
is.
one. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is the Sabaeans. Understand? Interestingly, this old
Mhm.
map mentions the Sabaeans.
Yeah. And
So very, very
when is
interesting. And the
this map
Sabaeans,
dated to? Like, when is this meant to be of?
can't remember, I think this is things. These are copies of copies of copies. This is probably like
Oh,
a 15th
fairs.
century version, which is a
Okay.
copy of a previous map, which is, so.
Hmm.
Okay, so of course the city of Mecca didn't
Hmm.
exist. There's no evidence for it. The Kaaba didn't exist. There's no evidence for it either. But we'll get to that as we go. So then Makaraba, let's talk about the where. Okay. Now, this term Makaraba, no one knows what it means. No one knows, you know, much about it. Okay. But let's talk about the where. So now you have a guy called Ptolemy. He's a Greek guy called Ptolemy, and he wrote a book called Shortened to the Geography.
Hmm.
And he gives a location for Makaraba, 73 degrees, 20 minutes, 22 seconds. Okay, and we'll
Okay.
get to all of that. In fact, let me bring up my map now. Let me
Sure.
just do that. Okay, so this is Arabia. I'm just going to highlight everything. So this is Arabia. This is Mecca right there. So that's Arabia. Okay, so we'll continue with that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Makkah, now according to Ptolemy in his map, it is a city in northwestern Arabia Felix. Now there are two Arabias, Arabia Deserta, or Desert Arabia, basically not happy, and Arabia Felix, which means happy Arabia, right?
Okay.
This is where all of the crops were and the, incense
More
and so on came
fertile.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Makkah means house of God. Okay, fine. So according to Ptolemy, it is a city in northwestern Arabia Felix. Okay, and it's the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, which is incense-producing Yemen, Oman, southern Saudi Arabia, including the Christian Najran. And Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century geography places the name Makkah in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. So this 2nd century, now technically he wasn't a map maker. He wrote a book on how to make maps.
Okay.
He provided instructions on how to create maps. So there were maps created based on his instructions, but he personally, to my knowledge, was not a map maker. Right. So a map was made, and typically everyone looks at a 14th or 16th century map, which is supposedly a copy of this 2nd century map. So they're not looking at an original 2nd century, they're looking at a much older one.
Right.
So Claudius
Okay.
Ptolemy's 2nd century geography places the name Makkah in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. And with a lack of historical evidence for Makkah, apologists will claim it is the modern city of Mecca.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Ptolemaeus Claudius, okay, who's known as Ptolemy, who lived from the year 90 to 168 AD, was a Greek writer who wrote The Guide to Drawing the Earth, which listed latitude and longitude for the cities, mountains, and other geographical features known in this day. So now we are using, in this case, one of Dan Gibson's works called The Location of Mecca in Ptolemy's Geography,
Okay.
where he translates the coordinates that Ptolemy used into modern coordinates. And we're also using Ian D. Morris, Mecca and Makkah. This is from the University of Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, let's start here. Now, myriad sources have included Ptolemy. So many old historical sources include Ptolemy. And in a chapter arguing that the Kush was the ancestor of the Saracens, the Kush are just below Egypt. This would have been like your Eritreans and so on.
Oh,
like
right.
black
Okay.
tribes. Then you have a guy called Bochart. And Bochart gave an account of Arabian geography. And he correctly identified the location of the Hejaz, and he named some of the towns in the Hejaz, and including Mecca. And then Bochart says, Ptolemy is Makkah. So Bochart makes the claim that Mecca, okay, what is known as Mecca today, he says in Ptolemy had called it Makkah. And he claims here it's called Mecca Rabba, or Great Mecca, which is actually Phoenician, if I recall.
Okay.
Now, this has been proven to be false because it's not Arabic. It doesn't come from the Arabic, and so therefore this is not an Arabic root at all. So this has been rejected by scholars. This has been roundly rejected. And notice that this mention of Makkah being Mecca does not appear anywhere until this guy makes the claim, until Bochart makes the claim. And this is the very first recorded instance where Makkah has been identified with Mecca. Welcome, Zagros. Nice to see you. Thanks for the advice last week. Very wise man. That's a very wise man, that smart guy.
Yeah,
Right,
Zagros
then,
is also a mod on here. It's good to have you, Zagros. A couple of people are also saying we can't miss out Arabia Petrea in this.
that is true. I mean, that's true. We can, but also there's another term that is very very unknown. Arabia, Hericium Ferax. There's also this term, Arabia Hericium Ferax, which means Arabia, the bearer of heresies.
Oh.
So this would have, yes. This is written in a very old document, I think 2nd century, as early as 2nd or 3rd, maybe 4th century. So this goes back extensively, Arabia, the bearer of heresies. And this is actually in relation to Najran. So let's go into the map here.
Sure.
So this is in relation to Najran, which is right here. This was a Christian center. This was a center of pilgrimage. And now remember, the Romans, when they legalized Christianity, they kicked out all of the heretics, basically. And all the heretics flew. They fled.
They fled.
They fled to a handful of places.
Oh, they flew on the Burak. Who knows?
Exactly. They went to basically 3 places. Alexandria in Egypt, up here. They went to Haran in Turkey. And they went to Najran in Arabia. So all the Gnostics and all the crazy heretics, all the real crazy ones, ended up here in Arabia.
Right.
So Yes. So, and these guys had a very strong link all the way up here.
Okay, and is that the
So,
area that you're referring to as
yes,
the Bearer of
Arabia,
Heresies?
Hadezium, Ferat.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Arabia, the bearer of
Interesting.
heresies. So, in other words, in that area, you not only had Christianity, you not only had the apostles, whatever, the not the apostles, but well, there are stories of them going. I'm still working on that, but you had missionaries going there, and then of course you had the heretics and you had the Gnostics fighting it out. There were huge ideological battles going on over the truth, over what was the message. So understand. So there was a lot of confusion reigning in that time and place.
Yes.
Right. So. Yep. So anyway, so moving on with Makaraba. So we have to debunk this one. Farishno, thank you. And happy birthday, guys. It's Farish's birthday.
Birthday. So yeah, thank you for being here. And Lloyd, I think you've made his birthday best birthday of my life. So thank you, Lloyd.
You're very welcome. No, thank you. So yeah, enjoy the day. So now, first identification of Makaraba as Mecca is traced to Samuel Bochart in his book Sacred Geography in the year 1646.
Okay, wow.
Not the 2nd century.
Yeah, no, much later.
So this claim is first made in 1646, and no satisfactory derivation has been proposed to explain the difference between the two names. So basically, it is taken by scholars today that he made a mistake. He just assumed that Makaraba was Mecca. He made an incorrect, the sound, taking the sound of the word and saying, okay, well, look, so you took some Phoenician words, right? And that's been rejected. Now, the word is based on the Southern Semitic root makrab, right? Meaning temple, sanctuary, but also altar, right? Mukarab. So, and earlier you might remember we spoke about the Mukarabs.
Yes.
Right? We spoke about the Mukarabs, right? And we'll get into all of that. So this term means temple, sanctuary, but also altar. And I remember when we're talking about the temple, now, is this, for instance, like Mecca was a temple, right? And we know for a fact there were temples called Meccas in Yemen.
Exactly, which housed many Kaabas as well, right?
Yeah, there were Kaabas in Yemen. Yeah, we had Kaabas in Yemen. We know this. So Bochart used the term MKT-RBH, which is not an Arabic root for Great Mecca. This is not correct for the Arabic language. Okay, this is not use of Arabic.
And Lloyd, so sorry, just real quick. Before 1646, do you have any ideas? Were they just never claiming that Makkah?
There was no claim. There's no traceable claim to Mecca before 1646. And then when he said it, suddenly everyone else started doing it.
Exactly. So prior to that, were people just not bothered to even prove it, or was it just
there's not the earliest solid reference to Mecca is I think the year 900.
Okay, so they were just banking on that reference in that previously before this claim was made, do you think?
I'm not sure, but clearly there's a lack of evidence prior to this date, and then there's almost no evidence of Mecca before the late 9th century.
Yeah, because I can imagine them jumping all over this claim, but I'm just like, what did you do prior to that for all those years when you had to try and find some evidence or force it into existence?
Exactly. So that's true. I think they just didn't talk about it. I mean, the internet didn't
that sounds
exist
about right. Exactly.
Right. So now Makaraba, so Karb, okay, to Al-Mahabisha. So now we're going to go to a place called Al-Mahabisha in Yemen. So if we adjust Ptolemy's coordinate system, okay, it will then correctly place all the towns and rivers in South Arabia on a modern map. However, the towns previously cited as the locations of Makkah are all moved to the wrong locations. So these are Ptolemy's original locations overlaid on a modern map. Notice that Mecca and Makaraba, okay, are marked in red. There's nothing here. Okay, this is in the middle of the desert. There's nothing here. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, this is taking the original locations. But notice also that clearly these things are all wrong, because notice how many cities end up in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Okay. So Ptolemy's map is clearly wrong.
Yeah.
Okay,
even is that Jeddah as well? For example, it's ended up in the ocean, I think.
Very possibly. Yeah, I can't see it too clearly, but yeah,
I think
this is not too
modern day
clear.
Jeddah. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is all wrong. So this is modern day Mecca, and this is where Makaraba would be, way too far north and east. Okay, but that's fine. So once we adjust it to a modern map, okay, Once we adjusted to modern, well, I'll get to that. So there are no Meccan archaeological artifacts until the 8th century. There's nothing before the 8th century, after Muhammad died. There's the first mention of Makkah is the Byzantine Arab Chronicle in 741 AD, which places Mecca in Mesopotamia, in Iraq.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the first time Mecca is listed on a map of the Middle East is 900 AD.
Okay. That just
Right.
so Siraj is saying, so I thought Makkah is attested late 7th century according to revisionist academia.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I mean, so let's see what we have here.
Sure.
Now, Mecca is supposed to be the mother of cities, right, as the Quran calls it, and it did not exist in the early 7th century. There is no record of it existing. I mean, they've paved over Mecca.
Yeah.
Right. There's been nothing found. With all the digging going on, literally nothing has been found. Now, Makoraba, though, what we find is once we correctly adjust all of these locations, it's located 720 kilometers south of Mecca.
Okay.
Right? So this is Makaraba. This is Yemen. Look how lush and green it is. And this is Al-Mahabisha right here, just southwest of Najran and just west of Marib and just northwest of Sana'a. So this is Al-Mahabisha according to Ptolemy's map.
Okay.
In Yemen.
Whoa, in Yemen, yeah. And even just look how the landscape differs. It's so much more in line with the descriptions in the Quran.
Yeah, it does. And you have dates and you have olives and things. You can grow
exactly.
Those
yeah.
So it meets the criteria that people assign to. I've been to Petra. I spent 2 days in Petra in Jordan in the past. So notice the proximity to Aksum here, and also the proximity to all the major temples that we discussed that are around here. Those Makkah temples. It's very, very close.
Yeah. And sorry, Lloyd, just to interject as well. So I've been to Petra as well. And when you go to the area around the Dead Sea, for example, one of the Islamic sources, or what I knew as a Muslim then, was that Muhammad said, obviously the place which is like the Dead Sea, but the incident of Lot, he used to walk past that every day, and one should remember the sin that took place here. And I would just think to myself, how could he be walking? Sorry, there's so much noise.
Oh, sorry.
How could he be walking past this casually from Makkah and saying, once you come across this, make sure you remember what happened here and don't, this is a reminder to my people not to engage in sin, for this is what my Lord does to them. And it just didn't sit right with me.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of weirdness that I don't understand. I just told you, we spoke about a few minutes ago before we came on, I spoke about these major Islamic scholars making the claim, for instance, that Constantine, who legalized Christianity in Rome, was the son of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate is the 1st century procurator who had Jesus killed. So now you're talking about a guy who lived in the 1st century, whose son lived in the 3rd, 4th century.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of accuracy. And of course, you've got these Islamic scholars who are writing their polemic against Christianity, and they're saying that St. Paul had been talking to characters that were alive in the 4th, 5th, and 6th century. Now, back then, there was no way to double check this. No one could tell. But now, with the internet, we can read through these works, and you can tell that the top scholars in Islam are, to put it mildly, that they're ridiculously foolish.
No more lies now.
Yeah, I mean, just notice that they're saying, for instance, there's the one guy saying this, he doesn't trust me, right? I mean, so look, here's a very simple thing, okay? I am not quoting Wikipedia. I'm not making this up. I didn't write this myself. I'm quoting you from sources that are academic papers and books. I've provided 1,200, almost 1,300 references to check. So this is 1 + 1 = 2. So I'm not an atheist. Is that wrong?
No.
So, right. So
exactly.
If you disagree with what I'm saying, you need to have a look you need to provide some evidence from your own academic sources as to why you think this is incorrect.
I mean, just saying, just commenting.
And also, I'm not an apologist. Go to my channel. I'm not an apologist. My job was, look, for some reason, I know there's some sort of idea that just because whatever, I have certain beliefs that I cannot be trusted. I mean, and this is a very common issue, unfortunately. Understand, I'm not an apologist. My job in the past was to make sure that Muslim terrorists, let's be very clear, Muslim Islamic governments paid my company. I was I was rented out at $20,000 a day was my consulting fee. Not that I got that, my company got that. $20,000 a day is what my company charged for me to make sure that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and other assorted Islamic crazies didn't murder people or blow up power stations, airports, trains, buses, and so on. Understand? This was my job. And prior to that, I was a bodyguard. My job was to make sure that person A didn't kill person B. And if need be, I needed to make sure that person A was dealt with. Let's just put it like that. So yeah, you're mistaking me for someone I am not. Okay. My job is to make very, very tough decisions and to make them correctly. And if need be, to make sure that whoever was trying to do harm would never do that again. So just want to mention that. Moving on. Okay, so right. Sorry about that, but
no, that's okay.
yeah,
Thanks, Lloyd, for that clarification, and also hats off to you for trying to make the world a better place.
You're welcome. So thank you. So now, okay, so now this is Ptolemy's map accuracy. This is Ptolemy from the 2nd century. This is his map. As you can see, this is a work of art. Do you think you could find your way to Tesco's using this?
Probably not.
Yeah, and this is a 15th century copy of his original
Wow.
map. And this is a projection from 1406. Okay. And notice you've got Terra Incognita and you've got Ethiopia down here. That's as far as they knew. So these maps were horrible. So there's no way that they can say, well, these maps were incredibly accurate. I mean, Arabia is entirely the wrong shape. Let's have a look. This is Arabia, and this is Italy over here. As you can see, this is Italy. This is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Let's continue. This here is Arabia, and this is what they have of Arabia. So you cannot say that those coordinates on Ptolemy's map can just be transplanted and bang, there's Mecca.
No.
Okay, right. So now this is another map. These are more works of art. Then, as you can see, this is completely off. This is a 1482 map. It's not a whole lot better. It's a little bit more detailed, but notice it also just tends to end. Even at that point in history, they hadn't actually explored much further south.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's kind of all it's all just concentrated in that region.
Well, thank you, Didron. I much appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I spend hours, hundreds of hours on this, and as I said, my references. Oh, for those who are going to criticize me, this map is taken from Ptolemy. I just took from Wikipedia. I just copied the picture, okay, from Wikipedia. Right, and now I'm zooming in Arabia again, and oddly enough, I mean, Mecca is not mentioned here, too, as far as I can see, but fine and well. Okay, now, so any questions or comments from you?
No, honestly, I'm just I'm thoroughly enjoying these maps, and this is all new information for me. So please carry on.
Okay, so that's dealing with the evidence of Mecca and where it's placed. So we know that according to when you extrapolate those coordinate systems, right, we find Mecca is now in Yemen. So now let's talk about Sabbah or the Sabai, the Sabai. Okay, so the Sabai are a people in the ancient kingdom known from local inscriptions as Sabbah, okay, or Sheba, what we would call Sheba in southwestern Yemen. Sabbah is attested in even Assyrian sources. So obviously these guys went and traveled north as well. Okay. In the annals of Tiglath-Pileser, to whom the Sabbah Ajah paid homage with gifts. So they used to do trade and they used to be on good terms with other groups, and they would send, their viceroys and send gifts and so on. So they were on good terms.
Lloyd, even just that, as soon as we see the word Sheba or Sheba, that itself, the Quranic reference to the character Bilqis was that. In common understanding.
Correct. The Makkah and Bilqis would be the temple of the Queen of Sheba. So Bilqis is the Queen of Sheba. Yeah. Yeah. Then you've got the Annals of Sargon II. In 715, the Sabaean Itamra is mentioned as bringing tribute. So they're well known, not just in the south, because these people clearly traveled up north. So they obviously traveled, they had links way up north. So that we show now on the trade route. And again, there are trade routes going north and south. So this connects north with south.
Okay.
Right, and there's an inscription of Sennacherib, according to which in 685, Karab Ili, KRB, the same to the Muqarrib, sent gifts. Okay, so just so we know, Sennacherib means Sin Acheriba. Okay, the moon god Sin has replaced the brothers. Okay, this is from Brill. Brill is one of the oldest academic publishers in the world. They're about 300 years old or so. So Sin has replaced the brothers. His brothers died, and father had a new son, and this king was called Sennacherib. Sin, the moon god, again. So it's further proof from another source that Sin is a moon god, of course, and we know that Sin was on Makkah. Sin was the god Makkah. Right, and then the kingdom fell after civil war between the Yemenite dynasties, okay, claiming kingship and splitting into separate territories. And then the Himyarite kingdom arose. Okay, so these are all Yemeni kingdoms. They were just warring Yemeni kingdoms. They all pretty much, they're all just in the same place. They are traders, as mentioned in Jeremiah and in Ezekiel. So they are mentioned in the Bible, and in Job 1:15, they are described as a rival nation of Israel due to their religious differences. And Isaiah 45 describes them as a people of great physique.
Okay.
So they're described as so they are mentioned biblically. So they do exist in the Bible. They're also mentioned in the Quran. Right.
Yeah, and also so far, like very on brand as traders and like warring dynasties with a difference in religion from the Israelites. It's all kind of there in the making.
Yeah. Coco Jasminos doesn't have anything to do with sin in the Quran. Yes, we'll get to that. I believe it does. Actually, yes. I needed to clean up a couple of areas.
Yasin, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, I needed to clean up a couple of typos. I have a few typos. People are going to go, but they're still in there. So I'll get to that later. In Job 1, we see that Sabaeans are actually used by Satan to attack and enslave Job's family. Now, understand it's irrelevant whether or not you think Job existed. It's irrelevant of whether or not you think it was real. The fact is the story exists. This is the orthodox narrative, and these people believed it. So, we'll just go with what the story is, right? So Satan uses the Sabaeans to enslave Job's family after killing all of their servants, okay? So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. This is about the story of Job, the suffering of Job, right? Mm-hmm. And the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them. So the Sabaeans, we know, are enemies of the Jews. They're enemies of God, and they're enemies of the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Right. So this has long been established, and we've mentioned some other sources prior to this as well, where we know that these people are, and of course there is this enmity towards Judaism, and also this enmity towards Yahweh, the God of the Bible, within Islam today. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now the Sabaeans are believed to be Muslims, according to Muhammad Shukri al-Alusi, who compares the Islamic religion to that of the Sabaeans. In his writings, he compares the two beliefs, and they are similar in most practices. Right, so that's according to that Islamic scholar. We opened with these statements.
Well, yeah. So he actually he interchanges Sabaeans and Muslims, though.
Yeah, they were pretty much interchangeable. The laws are the same. The practices were the same. We opened with that. We discussed how they go around the Kaaba and all. Mm-hmm. So, right, yes. So, someone made a comment. Okay, I'll have a look at that later. So, but thank you, Zagros. I appreciate that. Right. So now the Sabaeans were practitioners of many elements of the religion of Abraham. So now we have evidence that there's the story that the Sabaeans. So we know from Al-Alusi that the Sabaeans their practices are very much similar to, almost identical to modern Islam. So clearly there's this one-to-one correlation, this plagiarism. But the Sabaeans are also said to be practitioners of many elements of the religion of Abraham. Now, we mentioned before that Abraham was a pagan moon worshipper. He was a Sabaean according to Jewish scholarship. Mm-hmm. Right? He was a Sabaean. He was a Babylonian moon god worshipper, which is exactly what the Sabaeans were doing. So now, which means that if the Sabaeans were doing it, then the religion of Abraham has to be what Muslims are looking for, this religion of Abraham. They reject Judaism, they reject Christianity, and they said, no, the former religion. Then that would be Sabaeanism, which means that if the religion of Abraham is what he was doing, then he was a Sabaean, then he was a Babylonian pagan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even by their own logic.
Yes, correct. So now the deity Sin, or Nana in Sumerian, is the Mesopotamian god of the moon and wisdom. So the Hikmah, right, first mentioned in 3500 BC, and Sin is among the most ancient and prominent deities attested in human history. So just wanted to mention that. Okay, so now let's continue. Sabaeans, some historical context. They carried out trade by land and by sea, leading to a massive growth from the 18th century BC onwards. They established colonies along the Red Sea and in Ethiopia.
Yeah, we also discussed how they were good seafaring people, right?
Correct. So they also had extremely lucrative spice trade, and especially frankincense and myrrh.
To this day, Oman and Yemen are still known for that. So
yeah, I've bought from there. It's brilliant. It's great
stuff. Same.
Yeah.
Omani
Yeah, so this,
frankincense especially. Anyway, sorry, we digress.
yeah, you're right. I don't have any anymore, but yeah. So the Sabaeans lived in the land of Sheba as regional monarchies. The first king was Karab, again, Mukarib al-Bayin, ruling from 700 to 800. So Karibel. So this is important. This will come up again. So Karibi Ilu, we mentioned him a couple of times. He was a Mukarib of Sabbah. Don't forget Makoraba, Karib. Makarib, K-R-B, that root.
Yeah,
And
that root,
Mu
yeah.
is one who is the servant of, or one who does. So mu is a prefix. It's an Islamic, it's an Arabic prefix. Mu means if you are a mu carpenter, you are one who does carpentry. If you're a mu computer programmer, you are one who does computer programming, right? So ma qaraba, ma mu karib, ma qarab. So, and karibal, which means one who carries out the instructions of el, okay, and bin, one who removes punishment. So this is one who has the force of law with him, but one who carries out the instructions. So Karib El, one who carries out the instructions of El, which we would shorten to Karibal, Baal. This is the god Baal once again.
Okay.
So, okay. So now various writers have also cited this narrative of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, Assyrians, Greeks, Romans in the 8th century, but that's a separate story. We're not going to go into the Queen of Sheba. And Sabbah is mentioned in the Quran, chapter 27 and 34, as the people of Tubba, they call them, Qawm Tubba, and in Quran 44 and Quran 50. All right. So now I'm going to draw another thread. So I'm going to jump to another thread, then I'll start tying all of these together.
Okay,
right.
Brill.
The term mihrab. I'm not going too fast, am I? Or
no. I mean, yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah, we have a lot to absorb, but go ahead. This is insane.
Yeah.
And you can always, when we tie it together, we can always kind of go back if anything was missed. But yeah, I'm with you. If you by the way, if you see any comments, Lloyd, that you want to address, feel free. I'm so focused on what you're saying, I kind of get distracted from the chat. So
yeah, me too. I'm just noticing that yeah, I mean, someone's questioning my credentials. Look, yeah. Do you mind if I question your credentials? Could I see your PhD in history while you're questioning mine? But understand, I am utilizing my entire archive has been made available to everyone to download. So I am simply quoting a number of academic sources. This one specifically is the Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 13. I'm looking up the reference to mihrab, and I guarantee you I did not write this myself. To buy a copy, this is the preeminent Islamic resource, academic resource in the world, and it costs about $40,000. It's about 35,000 euros to buy a copy, to buy a set of this. So the term mihrab, okay, is the prayer niche in the mosque, right? It indicates the direction of prayer, and it's made up of an arch, the supporting columns, okay, and it gives the impression of a door or a doorway. Now you might remember we showed the mosque in Jerusalem, which had this fake archway, which was something that was typical of the temples in Yemen. Okay, that mihrab, okay, the prayer niche. Now the mihrab, according to the early Ethiopic, would mean temple.
Okay, yeah, well, because again, now in mainstream Islam, it's just you see that in every mosque, and that's kind of where the imam will stand and lead the prayer from. But
right, so yeah, so I'll tie some threads. These are things for you to consider, for you to think about. So notice you have the pillars, okay? So we'll see here, okay? Now you've got these pillars again. This idea of the pillars. Remember the Sabaean temple pillars, right?
Yeah.
Which was common to the moon god worship of the Sabaeans. So the term Kaaba, so outside of the standard Islamic narrative, nothing is known of the Kaaba's history. And we will dig into that as we go through. Now, the only reason for presuming the Kaaba was in existence in the 2nd century AD is the mention of Mecca as Makraba by Ptolemy. Now, notice this is mentioned in the Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 4. But we know that this is false because I mentioned in the previous slide that Bochart was the first one to draw that conclusion in 1646. Ptolemy did not say it. Bochart claimed that Ptolemy said it. So now we're going to have a look at what Ptolemy actually said. What was the context? What did Ptolemy actually say in the 2nd century? So in the concise Encyclopedia of Islam, okay, little is known of the history of the Kaaba outside Islamic tradition, but there is reason to believe that the shrine was an active pilgrimage site as early as the 2nd century. The geographer Ptolemy calls the city Makoraba. Now, we know that this is false. We've just shown that Ptolemy did not call it Makaraba. Bochart in 1646 said that Mecca is Makaraba and Makaraba is Mecca. Ptolemy did not. All that Ptolemy said was that he mentioned Makaraba with the significance of Mikrab, meaning
Right.
the temple.
Okay. Okay. So that had nothing to do with the claim that Bogart made or the one that's being attributed to Makkah. He simply meant a temple or something as we see in terms of the mihrab today. And yes, in Farsi it's called mihrab. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, and it's the same. And the word is actually Ethiopian. The word actually goes back to the Ethiopian, to Mekrab.
Okay.
Yeah. And remember, the early temples that we were referring to when we opened was that this was Ethiopian moon god worship as well, to the god
Yes.
Al-Makka, right, to the god Makkah. So Mekrab, or temple, right? So all that Ptolemy was referring to was a temple in southwestern Yemen, and we've located that now in Yemen, or in southwestern Arabia. Okay, Janelle, thank you very much. Now, Mecca is known to the ancient geographers as Makaraba and to the Arabs as Makkah. Now, the name Makaraba means temple in various Semitic languages. This probably referred to the Kaaba. Okay, but we know that there were Kaabas in Yemen because there are references to Kaabas in Yemen.
And therein
Glaser
lies the problem, probably, right? They literally translate that in Arabic as Makkah. So when there's that many different types of Makkahs or Makurabas,
yeah,
and their location and placement is in Yemen, it really like blows out of the water Abraham building a Kaaba in modern day Mecca completely. And it could just also be lost in transliteration with the word and the association.
yeah. Now we'll look at it. I mean, so we'll have a look, and I'll give you what my thoughts are, at least my conclusions, but everyone is obviously free to look at the evidence and then sort of figure out what they think. So Glaser believes this name may have signified the same as the South Arabian or Ethiopian mikrab, or temple. And at that time, though, when this word came into existence, temple referred to temples of Makkah, the moon god.
Right.
Right. And in modern Islamic usage, mihrab means prayer niche. But notice the prayer niche with the columns. Once again, with the columns. We're dealing with these columns again, which we discussed early on. And so you have the propylon, these propylon at the fake entrance. This is a common feature of mihrabs. All right. So now let's have a talk about Abraha. So we'll put all these pieces on the table again, all these pieces on the board, and then we'll start tying them up. Okay. So, aside from Muslim traditions, practically nothing is known of the history of the Kaaba. So the sole reason for presuming that the Kaaba was already in existence is the mention of Mecca under the name Makaraba by the geographer Ptolemy. But notice again, we've shown that all of these encyclopedias have made this statement, but we know that when we trace it back, it's based on Bochar's statement in 1646. Ptolemy never said it's Mecca. He just said it's a temple.
Yeah.
Bochart was the one who made that mistake. Okay. So now you've got Glaser, okay, who says to us, the accounts of the campaign of Abraha, which may have been elaborated with legendary features, also suggest the existence and worship of the Kaaba in the 6th century, but they tell us nothing of its appearance or its equipment. Okay, so now Abraha, again, which may well be legendary, we've discussed a little bit of that. And what we've also shown with Abraha mentioning that he had this inscription made in the major temples in Yemen where they speak of Muhammad, right? Muhammad is Jesus. And so, but we'll get back to that again. Now, Abraha is also spelled Abreha, okay? And he flourished in the 6th century. So he's the Ethiopian Christian viceroy of Sabbah, Yemen in southern Arabia. He was a zealous Christian, and he is said to have built a great temple at Sana, Christian temple or church, called Al-Qulais, to compete with the Kaaba at Mecca. Now, notice he was not in Sanaa. He actually was in Marib. Let's go to Marib. So Marib is the old capital right here of Yemen. Sanaa is up here, and this is Marib. So he went to Marib. Now, remember, there was the major temple to the Queen of Sheba, the major temple of the Queen of Sheba, which was to Makkah, the moon god, happened to be here. There were 3 of them in this area. There were 3 major temples. So why would he want to, when he invaded here, because these guys were being a problem, why would he want to compete with a temple up here when there were massive temples to the major deity of the region right here, and he wanted to build a temple next to them to compete with these guys?
Yeah, true.
These were centers of pilgrimage as well.
Yeah.
Right? So he repaired the irrigation dam at the Sabbah capital of Marib, And he's famous for the military expedition that he led northward against the city of Mecca, supposedly in the same year as Muhammad's birth, about 570, although other references talk about this happening in 530. Though it was supported by elephants, the expedition failed, and Muslims believe that Mecca escaped capture only through a miracle. Remember, he had the white elephant called Mahmud, which is the same root. So he had the white elephant called Mahmud, which is the same root as Muhammad. It's just a contraction of the name Muhammad. It's like Bob for Robert,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Bill for William. So that is Muhammad. So he had an elephant called Muhammad that wouldn't go into Mecca and stopped. Abraha's rule ended in 575 when the Persian Sasanians invaded and brought the Sabbah kingdom to an end. Outside of later Islamic tradition, however, there is no mention of Abraha's expedition. There is no historical mention of it whatsoever. And this is including from Abraha's own inscriptions.
Okay.
Abraha himself, and he's a real historical figure, does not write about this event at all.
Wow, okay. So sorry, where is this reference then? This, if it's not mentioned in his own inscriptions, where is this?
This is in
derived from.
Let me just find. So this is mentioned in. Let me just go down to where I am here. Outside of Islamic narratives, okay, there's no reference to. Let me see, Abraha in Mecca. So what I'm using it is okay. So a couple of the references down the bottom here that I'm using. Okay, so Britannica. Okay, .com, the biography of Abraha. I'm using Wikipedia, references to Abraha. Then I've got Wikipedia, Year of the Elephant. Okay, and then I'm using the Encyclopedia of the Quran, page 43. Okay, that's a 3,500 page reference, that Encyclopedia of the Quran.
Okay.
So Islamic tradition talks about this event, but there is no other historical record whatsoever of this elephant attack on Mecca. There's nothing. Even Abraha, in his own writings, and he did exist, talks about it. So it's odd that this is one of the major events in life, but there's no record of it. Nothing.
Yeah, precisely.
And then African war elephants had not been used in that region for over 600 years. So it's difficult to explain. There's actually a book called War Elephants. In fact, hold on. Let me actually do this. So let me go to my reference here.
Yeah, sure. Also, you have that question of when you're talking about Arabia, as Muslims want it to be known, and Makkah and that part of the world, like just the water requirements of these African elephants that you're having to bring over and feed and water. It's just not feasible.
To travel like 800 kilometers north through the desert, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So in this book, John M. Kistler, War Elephants, he talks about the Year of the Elephant. He actually discusses it. Okay. And African war elephants had not been used and not been seen in that region for over 600 years. Right? It is difficult to explain how Abraha would have gotten hold of African war elephants in Arabia. And furthermore, Quran 105 appears to be appealing to traditions from the book of Maccabees.
Okay.
So it seems he's appealing to references in the book of Maccabees. And in fact, according to various of the Islamic sources, this attack on Mecca apparently happened before the birth of Muhammad's father.
Okay. Yeah. And in the reference in the Maccabees, is it pretty much the same? Very similar? That it's kind of been plagiarized?
I'm not sure. I actually didn't look into this. I just put the reference down, but I haven't looked into this too deeply. Because look, I mean, this is a huge amount of stuff, so I haven't had time to read through.
No, I think each thing is a rabbit hole in itself. But kudos to how much you've done already.
But as I said, this is the reference here, War Elephants. And so you can see here, Year of the Elephant, page 177. Let's just go there, assuming the Year of the Elephant. So you guys can, this is in the folder that I gave you guys the link to. Feel free to read at your leisure. Okay,
awesome.
Now notice, Abraha's invasion and Muhammad's birth are often dated to a year equivalent to 570 AD. And the commentators record no unanimity on this matter. Qurtubi, for instance, is representative in presenting sources that equate the Year of the Elephant with that of Muhammad's birth, which is the standard Islamic narrative, as well as that place Abraha's attack. Okay, and also Qurtubi also mentions sources that place Abraha's attack 23 or even 40 years prior.
Okay. So Muhammad's birth.
Well before his birth. So this is before the birth of his father. So this is in the time of Muhammad's grandfather. And Western scholars have also long questioned the accuracy and the reliability of these chronologies, right? Various
As
top
they
scholars,
should.
the inconsistencies within early Arabic Islamic sources, and there are contradictions between them. They highlight these. So there's not even, and also, as I said, Abraha himself writes nothing about this event. There's no
Yeah.
records within his own. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, from where I'm
according to some,
standing, it seems like a complete fabrication, right? And a distortion of history. There's not even unanimity between them.
yeah, exactly. There is no unanimity.
Mm.
Exactly. It's all guesswork. Yeah. Now, according to some of the histories, when the people of Mecca had fled, okay, blah, 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 and the elephant was called Mahmud, according to the Islamic story, according to the Islamic narrative. The elephant's called very conveniently. So the whole formation came to a halt because the elephants would not go without their leader, Muhammad. Let's just call it Muhammad because that's what they're alluding to in the Islamic sources. Muhammad was
True.
beaten and cajoled, but would not take one more step towards Mecca because, Muhammad wouldn't go and attack Muhammad, no, would he?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And of course, they're going to throw al-Waqidi under the bus any second now. But al-Waqidi gives a tradition that there were 13 elephants with the army, besides this famous one called Mahmud. And this was the only elephant that escaped death from the shower of stones.
Of course he was.
Yeah, and Waqidi adds that Abraha sent to Abyssinia for the famous elephant Mahmud expressly to join his expedition. So he went and fetched it from Arabia, from Abyssinia.
Special order to get Mahmud
Special
the
delivery.
elephant.
Special. He
Yeah.
probably brought it with the birds as well. The birds probably went and fetched it. Flying
Yeah.
carpet deliveries. Yeah, so understand, this is from the Life of Muhammad, Volume 1 by William Muir. All right, so yeah.
So sorry,
the
Lloyd,
lead elephant,
Siraj is asking, Mahmud and Muhammad are the same. The derivation is exactly the same in Arabic, right?
yeah, the derivation, it's from the root MHMD.
Mm.
It's from the same root. It's just Ahmad. For instance, Muhammad is sometimes called Ahmad.
Yeah, exactly. That's another name for him as well.
Yeah, it's just a diminutive of Muhammad. It's like a diminutive. It's a shortened version.
Yeah. Oh, the elephant whisperer. Yes.
Close enough. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the lead elephant was a white elephant. A white elephant. Very, very white. Sorry. Last week you mentioned Houris, right?
Yes.
Last week you mentioned Houris, and I want to bring something up here that something that people don't know about Houris. I want to mention this. I want to bring this up. I want to show you two words. The one is Hura, and then we're going to go look at Houris quickly. Okay. This is the Encyclopedia of Islam, which, as you can see, is not Wikipedia, and I did not write this myself. Okay. So Hura, in Bedouin society, it is the name for the young girl who must be a virgin, who must be white, who is given to the family of a murderer, to a member of the injured family as compensation. So if in ancient Bedouin, this is Arabic society, this is the Arab society. If you murdered someone, remember you said you can pay compensation, cash compensation.
Blood money, yeah.
Well, you can also give them a white woman.
And a virgin white woman.
A virgin white woman, yeah. You can give them a white chick. That's pretty much the story.
My word, I've never ever seen the Hurra, and again that could be like epistemologically where Hur comes from as well, because the same concept, right? As in, but the Quran has even weirder descriptions of like there'll be translucent.
So remember, the Quran is not a dictionary. The Quran is not an encyclopedia, so we need alternative sources to go and find that information.
Precisely.
Right?
Wow.
And so now let's have a look here. Let's go have a look
sorry,
at
Lloyd, it is just it's blood money in the form of giving over a young virgin white girl to be literally raped.
Yeah, and guess where they got the white girls from? Not Africa, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
They kidnapped them from Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, even the word Slav, right? They just used to refer to all white people as Slavs, and because from the word slave.
Slave, yeah, because they were the original slaves. White people were the original slaves, and we can get into.
And
talk on slavery.
Islamically, they're fair game because they're not believing women in that sense, right?
Yeah, no, slavery is another very misunderstood topic. I can get into that another time, but let's just say that the standard slavery narrative is completely backwards. It's really upside down. But that's a story for another day.
Sure.
So Hawra or Hawra, okay, plural Hur, meaning white. So the root of Huri means white. Now notice they say it's applied in particular to the very large eye of the gazelle or oryx. So by extension, Huri signifies a woman whose big black eyes are in contrast to their whites. And let's just overlook this part, the whiteness of their skin. A Huri is a white woman.
Yeah.
Muhammad and his men wanted white women in paradise. Not black women, not brown women, white women.
White women. Yeah.
So the
Precisely.
virgins,
And that reference, sorry, to the big eyes and big black eyes as well, is referenced so many times in Islamic sources. They're also called what, Nur al-Ain or something, which is used to describe them, like the light of their eyes and these big black eyes, as well as other things. But yeah, absolutely despicable. So
yeah,
this is in the Encyclopedia of Islam, right? We can
this
go.
is an
Yeah.
Encyclopedia of
Oh,
Islam.
awesome,
Again,
awesome.
link
Thank
in
you.
the description, I guess, and link is now on the top. So just go to the section called, you'll see in the folder, you'll see dictionaries and references. Go to that folder, the references folder. You'll find them all there. This is volume 13. This is like the index. So this is like the dictionary of the encyclopedia, and then you can always go to the volumes and go look up further information here.
Oh, Lloyd, thank you for this treasure chest. Honestly.
Yeah. So Muhammad was very, very obsessed with white women. Okay. So archaeological discoveries in South Arabia suggest that the year of the elephant may have been 569 or 568 as the Sasanian Empire overthrew the Aksum Empire. Okay, fine and well. So look, there's all sorts of conflicting stuff, but just a story on this, just a quick discussion. According to Muhammad Assad and other scholars, okay, and if you look at the word in the Hindu, if you look at the word in other languages as well, and in other cultures, there's a similar story to this whole birds dropping stones. However, that word has a couple of potential meanings. It can also mean a sickness, like chickenpox or the mumps. It can also mean sickness, like fever, right? Muhammad Assad says this does not describe birds literally carrying small rocks. According to Zamakhshari and Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, he states the words used, namely the stones of Sijil, denote a writing, a decree, a holy decree, something that's been decreed by Allah. And he says that this decree by Allah was a very sudden epidemic outbreak, which according to Ibn Ishaq caused fever, hasba, and smallpox, judari. So thus the fact that the stone-hard blows of chastisement preordained were a sudden virulent epidemic. So it's stone-hard blows of chastisement, not of stones falling. This is another alternative explanation for this.
Okay, wow. Just when you think that the explanation can't be more whack than the original.
Yeah. So they take the word
proves you
hasba,
wrong.
and it means pelting or smiting with stones, but it's like a colloquial term for having a fever. So yeah, like just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
And also in a Shia hadith, and this is also, as I showed, it's also within even the Sunni writings, right? Qurtubi and others. Imam Ali was born in the 30. Okay, never mind. I'll just go to this point. Some scholars have placed the year of the elephant 1 or 2 decades earlier than 570, so as early as 550. And there's a tradition attributed to Ibn Shab al-Sukhri in the works of Abdul Razak al-Sanani, placing it before the birth of Muhammad's father.
Okay.
So
Wow.
the scholars
So
can't make up their minds about this.
Yeah, exactly. So some are saying it's in his grandfather's time. Some are saying it completely coincides with his birth. Again, all over the shop.
Yeah, there's just no clarity. So let's talk about haram, right? So among the Bedouin, it's a sacred area around a shrine, a place where holy power manifests, okay? It's the sacred territory of Mecca, amongst other things. However, there's this term, al-Haramain, the two holy places. Usually it means Mecca and Medina, but unfortunately, the haram can also mean Jerusalem and Hebron.
Okay, can it?
Yes, it can. So al-Haramain, the two holy places, could be
Yeah.
Mecca and Medina. It could also be Hebron, is where Abraham died.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay.
Jerusalem and Hebron. Now that's very odd
Mm.
that they're not aping Jerusalem and Hebron. Okay. Now notice in Surah 4, 125, in which Abraham is described as Hanif, it is stated in addition that Allah took him as a friend, and therefore the later designation of Hebron, the burial place, as Al-Khalil. Okay, so fine and well. Now notice it was not until after the Hijrah, right, 622, that Muhammad, on the occasion of this controversy with the Jews, pronounced the Old Testament patriarch a Hanif and the first Muslim, and maintained that he, together with Ishmael, the ancestor of the Arabs, built the Kaaba. So there's no record of Abraham being discussed by Muhammad. There's no record of Abraham being a Muslim. There's no record. Okay, so until the Jews soundly reject him, and then he suddenly in the record, in the historical record, the claim comes about, oh, by the way, Abraham was the first Muslim.
He scrambles to get legitimacy, right? When
yes,
he's cornered and outright rejected, he has to form a link with something that's
correct.
even, yeah.
But we also know that Adam was the first Muslim, right? We also know that
Yeah.
Muhammad was the first Muslim, and we
Yeah.
also know that Khadija was the first Muslim.
Yeah. True.
You know, so yeah, so Adam is the first Muslim, Muhammad is the first Muslim, Khadija is the first Muslim. They're all first, because
Yeah.
so that
They're all
makes perfect sense.
simultaneously the first Muslims.
Yeah, exactly. That time works differently in Islam land. So yeah.
Yeah.
So understand. So Islam was not able to claim, okay, so as being the religion of pure monotheism and thus priority over both Judaism and Christianity. So this is purely an assertion. So this was his response. He's polemic in response to being rejected. So now he asserted his connection. Of course, this is now obviously related supposedly to Ishmael, but this claim is now okay. Obviously, probably this derives from the biblical connection to this. Supposedly, Ishmael's going to be, he's going to start a line of his own. But that's a discussion outside of this. But
okay.
Muhammad
Would Muhammad have been privy
Abraham,
to that information, though, do you think?
Possibly through the Ethiopians, through their Bible.
Okay.
Yeah. Very likely. So yeah, but prior to that, so prior to this period, there was no, Abraham didn't feature at all. And then suddenly he makes this claim. He suddenly jumps on that. And Haramain is dual form of Haram, meaning the two sanctuaries. So basically now he's referring to, so now they're claiming that Jerusalem and Hebron are also important to them. Those are also now Muslim cities. And there's absolutely no evidence of that. Okay. But notice the word haram originally means pyramid.
Okay.
Remember I mentioned how all the mekrebs and all the other terms all referred to pyramids earlier on when I spoke of these pillars and these faux arches and all that?
Yeah.
All of that originally refers to Egyptian pyramids. And once more, we have a connection to pyramids and Egypt. This keeps coming up. All of these connections all seem to point ultimately from Babylon. It all seems to point back to Egypt.
Right. Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah, that keeps coming up. So now, okay, a short lesson on grammar. So, mu, the term mu.
I love the picture you've got up there.
Sorry. Yeah. So I will, let me see. So Sharia, okay, enables Muslims to bring their lives in line with the will of Allah. A Muslim is Sharia compliant. So to shorten this whole spiel that I'm going to go through here, basically, mu is a prefix, right? And the resulting noun means a person who does the thing that the root word denotes. So a Muslim is someone who supposedly submits to Allah. Okay, but we've already shown that Silm, before it meant salam and before it meant submission to Allah, Silm was the name of the moon god Shalim, the star god Shalim. And it also meant graven idol. So someone who follows. Right? So the term mu, so Silim, right, the root Silim, they claim obviously it means salam and it means Islam. But prior to that, the first meaning was shalim, and also it is graven idol. Right? That's the original meaning of SLM. So
wow, that's a history lesson for Muslims right there.
Yeah. So salim, the original meaning is graven idol. So now Muslims are by definition Sharia adherent. Okay, and I've shown you some of the Sharia, for instance.
Yes.
Okay? So if you do not submit to the Sharia, then you have to renounce the Sharia, of course, and then you're not a Muslim. But if you are a Muslim, in theory, you are an adherent to the word of Allah, to the will of Allah, which is His law. And don't forget, if Islam is a religion of laws, actually, no, I'm going to bring up a presentation. So I'm going to bring something up. I'm going to go here.
Yeah.
Would you think it's useful for me to define the word deen?
I was just going to say, if you're about to do that, please, by all means, go ahead. I think it will really just lend itself to the general conversation about when you say the words Sharia and Deen and things from now on, people will know what you mean.
Wrong one. Good grief. Wrong set of slides. Let me close this. My bad.
Because anyway, everybody that's watching, as a Muslim, you'd think Deen means just your religion, your faith. In England, it's colloquial for Dawa boys to be like, get on your Deen, focus on your deen. It's about the deen, not the dunya. So it's used in that context. But what Lloyd is about to show us is a lot more darker, and it's definitely food for thought. So yeah, have a look at this.
Yeah, I noticed that Idlebreak is really, really desperate to distract. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I've honestly been, because the presentation is there's so much going on here. I'm not even focusing on the chat, but if there is something I need to keep an eye on, please do let me know. And Zagros and mods have the power to make sure things stay steady in the chat, guys.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, some of these things we can tackle some of these other stories. As I said, I'm not an apologist. I don't do that. That's not what I do. I talk about this stuff. Okay, I was paid to make sure that crazy Muslims didn't kill people. That was my job. Simple. So I'm not
Yeah,
desperately
so
interested in.
please, if you
Yeah,
can kind of
sorry.
keep it on topic. Oh no, I was just mentioning to people who are
Yeah.
who are stirring things up in the chat to just keep it on topic completely. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Lloyd. You have to deal with this. I'm sorry.
I know. So I mean, if Siraj Haq could please, if you can point out the mistakes I've made in the past, I'd be very grateful, so I can go back and correct those errors. If you can be very specific and give those exact errors for us, so that we can go back and fix those things, that'll be greatly appreciated. Okay. So now, okay, Norse mythology, you need to fix your, you need to fix some of your history there. Okay. Now, a deen. So Islam is not a religion. Get this clear. Okay. Words matter. Details matter. Islam is not a religion. It is a deen. Islam does not call itself a religion. As a convenience, Muslims use the term religion because it's how Westerners see it. But Westerners have a very different concept of a political system and a religion. We separate. Don't forget, in Western ideas, well, in the Western world, in Western philosophy, we separate between church and state. We make a separation. Islam does not. There is no separation between mosque and state. They are one. Law, politics, and religion are a single thing, right? Those are a single thing.
Yeah,
And
which is why even in a Muslim country, if you are an Islamic country, Sharia has to dominate. There is no.
Correct. Now, understand, a deen is a socio-political system. It is not a religion. It is like communism, fascism, Nazism. This is a deen. It's a political system. And in fact, specifically, let's read it. It is a totalitarian political system. So a deen embodies perspectives on existence, on life, society, and on socio-political systems. Islam is a complete and competing ideology. It competes with the rest of the world. It's a separate civilization. It's instant civilization. It's a replacement civilization for what we have in the West. So it is a system of life and society. It is a political, ideological system, right? For Muslims, Islam is then touted as a superior ideology that towers, is so incredibly superior over all other isms and all other socio-political systems. They state it is a political framework for managing mankind's affairs. So a deen, Islam is not a religion, it is a political framework for managing mankind's affairs. Let's have a look. Now, the linguistic meaning. The famous classical Arabic dictionaries are Qamus al-Muhit and the Lisan al-Arab, the tongue of the Arabs. Okay, I didn't make these. These are not Wikipedia entries. These are actually the oldest Islamic dictionaries in the world. This one is here, 20 volumes. These are the most respected Arabic dictionaries in the world. And they both state that there are 4 meanings of the word deen. Let's have a look at what those meanings are. The first is subjugation and dominance. Not religion, yeah. Subjugation and dominance, with subcategories of ownership, government, administration, and legislative authority. I'll repeat that. Subjugation and dominance, ownership. Remember the old saying, ownership is 9/10 of the law, or possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Yeah. So 90% of American law is about ownership, possession. So understand, it's a legal system, and it enforces this law. So the legal system is designed to enforce that law. So you have ownership, government, administrative, or legislative authority. That is purely political and legal. Then, second meaning, obedience and bondage. Bondage would be slavery. Subordination and dominance under the power of others. That's what subjugation means.
Yeah.
Subordinated. Yeah, go on.
I mean, it's just, everything about it is just oozing totalitarianism right now, almost like a fascist setup and state of adherence. Yeah.
Correct. The third meaning is rules and regulations, laws. So doctrine, ideology, tradition, and notice it doesn't say and religion. It says or religion.
True.
It
That's a
can
big
mean
difference.
religion.
Yeah. That isn't religion here features as a mere footnote into what is the actual meanings behind deen or religion. That's just on the back end of the obedience, bondage, subjugation, and dominance as the
Yes.
primary motives.
Yeah, or religion.
Madness.
So it can also possibly refer to religion, but mostly it refers to other things. But it can if you need it to.
Yeah, if you needed to. Yeah.
Right. And the fourth is reward and repayment, justice and accountability. So notice if you count only these words here, right, after the colons, then what happens is, okay, well let's continue. Let's continue.
Mm.
So the first meaning is subjugation or dominance, administrative or legislative authority to put pressure to be obedient, using power to enslave or to make someone obedient. That is political. That is using force. That is totalitarian. In Arabic, duntuhum fadanu means I subjugated them so they obeyed me. Also, duntuhu means I ruled or governed upon him. That is political. Thus, the word dayan is used to indicate a person who dominates and rules over a state.
Wow,
that is totalitarian control of a state.
Yeah.
That is not a religion.
Entirely.
The second meaning is obedience. Or you read the second one. Please go ahead, Nuria.
Second meaning is obedience and bondage, subordination and domination by someone, and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. The obedient tribe is called Gaumun Dayanun. Here, al-Din does not mean religion, it means obedience. Yeah, I mean, wow, because people who are so, I just feel like really there are people out there who think Islam is like a spiritual path or the path to enlightenment and union with God. And here we are reading about obedience and subjugation, and which is what people like you and I, when we read the Quran, we can see that oozing off the pages, right? Like anybody who's not a Muslim, the whole concept of dhimmi and jizya and polytheists and pushing Jews and Christians to the side of the road, that oozes out in the Quran basically. But this is the root behind Islam as an ideology. It's clear as day.
Yeah. Can you guys silence Idlebreaker for a few minutes? He's just spamming, and I mean, he's just distracting from the conversation. If you could just, time him out for a few minutes, because
Sure.
I'm not sure
I've
that he's
gone ahead and
adding
done
much
that,
to the
don't worry.
conversation. So understand, deen does not mean religion, it means obedience. Notice humiliation. Don't forget, a dhimmi is humiliated under subjugation by Muslims.
Exactly. And it says you need to humiliate them subjugate them until they feel humiliated. So those two concepts are very much ingrained: subjugate and humiliate. It's not enough just to subjugate. You've got to go further and enforce tax on them. You've got to be able to take their women if you want to. There's so many levels of it.
Actually, it's not tax. Technically, the jizya is punishment. Doesn't mean tax. It means punishment.
Flippin' heck.
I can go into that another time. That's a fascinating conversation on its own. Once you look at dhimmis and jizya, when you go into the law, now the best book for this would be, actually, let me actually find that for you. The best for that will be...
Let's definitely have a discussion on that. That would be very eye-opening
Hidayah
as well.
Volume 2. Okay. The best book to cover this topic when you're talking about dhimmis and jizya is the Hidayah, Commentary on Islamic Laws, Volume 2. Okay? Copy in the folder that you guys have a link to. This is it, the Hidayah, Commentary on the Muslim Laws, okay? Volume 2. This is the one you want. This one discusses dhimmis and jizya. So, for instance, this is the most detailed of the Sharia manuals, of the fiqh manuals, the Islamic law manuals. This one is the most detailed. It's 4 volumes. It's about 2,652 pages, if I remember.
Wow, okay.
So when Muslims start to learn, when they become an imam, they have to go to seminary and they have to study. They will start with the very basic Sharia manuals, which are obsolete, technically obsolete, but they're the simple foundation, and they will teach basic things like prayer. When they finish their study, typically they will end with the Hidayah, because this one is the most lengthy, the most detailed of them.
Right, okay.
Right. So notice, of thefts which occasion amputation and the manner of cutting off the limb of a thief. You can see this discusses this, and you'll have 100 and you have 19 pages discussing cutting off the limb of a thief. So
this is a terror manual for amputations and executions.
And notice on the manner of waging war. This is a plunder and piracy. Plunder is associated with piracy. Plunder and its division.
Yeah.
This is in the Sharia. Okay, let's have a look. On the conquest of infidels, tithes, and jizyat, capitation tax. They'll call it capitation tax, but you will see that they will define it explicitly as a form of punishment.
Wow. Punishment for merely not accepting Islam.
Correct. But that's a lengthier story for another day.
Yeah,
The laws
sure.
concerning apostates, well, you're to be killed. I think that much is well known. This is clear.
I am indeed, Lloyd. Yes.
Yeah. And then on slaves. So I know someone said there that the Bible condones slavery and the Bible forces. Well, personally, I don't own any slaves. I haven't done so recently. If anyone's a slave in this house, it's me. I have to do the dishes. So, right. And it should be noted that Christians abolished slavery, right? Whereas Islam has not abolished slavery. Islam, it is legal. It is still legal. Muhammad owned at least 60 slaves. Okay. Correct, Abedi. Perfectly correct. Like Nazism, yes, correct. That is 100% correct statement. And if you go through the Hidayah, you will discover that. Yeah. So slavery is not abolished in Islam. Muhammad, it's Sunnah, and therefore it's law because Muhammad owned slaves. And if you go through that, and of course, waqf, that's something else. Okay, but that's so. Hopefully, do you have any questions? Anything you'd like me to maybe sidetrack to?
No, I mean, this is great. Let's park this discussion for another day as well, because again, just to follow up what you were saying, Abdi, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm so glad to know that you're an ex-Muslim, first of all. Well done for leaving this cult behind. But second of all, exactly, one of the most damaging things for me was to realize just how much of a warlord Muhammad was, and how even the word for apostate basically means treason, and the whole political setup behind it. So instead of constantly just talking about Islam in the way that most progressive Muslims see it, we have to highlight the dangers behind that, and the fact that it is an all-encompassing complete political ideology with huge fascist tendencies, and the expansionist agenda that it hasn't stopped. It's not fizzled out. It's just in a state of, let's wait until we're in the majority and let's do whatever we've got to do in the meantime, whether it's taqiyya or what have you. But there was a sheikh, a really famous one, who actually made a video recently and told Muslims to prepare for their time when they need to pick up swords and fight. So this is very much a real threat. And as Lloyd was saying, he spent his life trying to fight against these kind of forces and to weed them out wherever they are and to stop them from wreaking havoc on the world. So yes, the more we can discuss Islam in terms of a political ideology and not just one of other spiritual religions or whatever, then the better, for sure. And yes, Trevor, you're right. Islam is dying. The internet is where Islam has come to die. I fully agree, and I really hope so.
Yeah, Norse mythology mentions something about apartheid. At some point, I might talk about apartheid because let's understand that what people think apartheid was. I grew up under apartheid. I'm actually South African. And once I go through the facts, I like facts. I like lists of facts, long lists of facts. And once we do that, you might find that your understanding of apartheid is sorely lacking because, how can I say, getting boiled and marinated in communist propaganda is not a good idea. So once we unmarinate you from the communist propaganda, you might find that you're thinking of what it is, and the truth might be two vastly different things. So, I mean, feel free to spot propaganda, but I might be able to disabuse you of that in the future. Okay, so
and
back to this.
Sorry, Lloyd, just this thing that, again, as you said, we took a little tangent, but I will definitely try and cut this into a separate video because, I mean, again, eye-opening stuff. So thank you for that. And yeah,
oh yeah,
just
sorry, I'll get back to the Dean thing. We need to get back to that. Sorry, let me finish that and I'll do something else. Yes, thank you very much for that, guys. I do appreciate it. Okay, so on that, so notice you've got these four different categories: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So look, depends how you view this, right? There's up to 20 categories here, or 10, depending on how you divide it. Okay. Now, let's take it as it literally shows itself, and there's 12 different categories. Religion is only 10th in the priority list of the Islamic law. Okay, religion is here. Everyone focuses here. Religion is a very, very tiny aspect of what Islam is about. this is what it's about. So just make a
Wow.
note of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we
And
just
everyone,
list those things out? Sorry. Ownership, government, administrative authority, legislative authority, subordination, dominance, doctrine, ideology, tradition, and then what all lay Muslims think it is, number 10, religion, followed by justice and accountability, which we've also seen according to the Islamic manuals, what justice and accountability looks like in their
right,
worldview.
correct. Just in answer to Jojo Freelancer, you deleted every single comment on that thread. You deleted what, 20, 30, 40 comments? Why would you do that? My comments are there. My replies to you are there. That can be checked. So you lied to me about being an atheist, attacking Islam and attacking Christianity, because I've seen that tactic so many times. Get a new script. Muslims, these apologists work off a Dawah script. It's an old script. I've seen it before. I can recognize it immediately. So I know the tactic of saying, well, Islam is terrible too, and then you just attack Christianity, you attack the Bible. You did the very same thing that other apologists do. You lied to me about not being a Muslim, and then I discovered you were a Muslim. When I confronted you with it, you deleted every single comment you made. I would say that I accused you correctly because I happened to catch you out. So moving on. Okay. Now, I want to mention the primary doctrine in Islam. The main doctrine in Islam is called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. I'm just going to do a very brief overview here.
Sure.
Okay. So so let me see. This would be roughly commanding the right, forbidding the wrong. Am I at the right place? Here we go. Holding one's tongue. I might have gone too far. Let me just, here we go. Book Q, commanding the right. Now this is the fundamental doctrine in Islam. An-nahy wal munkar. Okay. So this is the single most important doctrine within Islam. Now we always think in terms of this verse says or this hadith says. We need to stop thinking in terms of verses and stop thinking in terms of hadith. We need to think in terms of doctrine.
Right.
So one verse can spawn a legal text of 1,000 pages with hundreds of laws and then descriptions of those laws. And we need to think in terms of doctrine. So let's have a brief look. I believe I may have covered this before, but let's look at this doctrine of commanding the right. Commanding the right means is enforcing the Sharia, and forbidding the wrong is to prevent others from violating the Sharia law. So in other words, the Sharia applies to non-Muslims as well. If you're not a Muslim, the Sharia applies to you just as much as it applies to a Muslim. Okay, let's have a look at what this doctrine means. A Muslim has to explain, he has to know that an act is wrong. Okay, so he has to have some understanding of Islamic law. Then he must explain that something is wrong. Then he must forbid the act verbally. Then, when you read through this, censuring with harsh words, this includes verbal abuse. This includes verbal abuse. This includes saying you, your mother, and so on. Okay, you, sexual innuendo, your mother, blah, blah, blah. Okay, expletive, your mother, expletive. That's what
condoned by Islam, actually encouraged.
It is commanded by Islam.
Commanded.
It is required by Islam. Censuring with harsh words, so Muslims must use verbal abuse eventually. Then they must right the wrong by hand. What do you think by hand means, Nuria?
I think to discipline them, really, by...
It means to hit someone.
Exactly.
Right the wrong by hand.
It's kind of just low-key the same thing they're using for the wife beating in the Quran, like the same kind of process, you know?
Correct. Right? Then, now notice, after they've hit you, they must intimidate you. Intimidation comes after force. Then, what are the last two, Nuria?
Assault and then force of arms. This is, I mean, how I don't understand how you can be privy to this information, or I mean, you're doing it with an agenda. That's fine as an actual Muslim, but there's nothing religious or divine or awe-inspiring or loving or peaceful about this. I mean, Lloyd, look at the list in front of us on how you're meant to go about it.
And notice, this is a suggestion. You don't have to go in the sequence. You can start here and then immediately go here.
Oh, can you? You don't have to go bit by bit?
No. You can start at you can start right here.
Okay. Interesting.
You are not required to follow.
Wow. Okay, I would have at least thought they would expect you to, I mean, for the religion of peace, Lloyd, as they say, I'd expect that they'd at least start with you just abuse them verbally first and then maybe lash out. But no.
So, Norse mythology, I think you are deliberately missing my words. I said the story about apartheid, the commonly accepted narrative about apartheid is based on communist propaganda. I did not accuse you. I did not say you're a communist. I said that story is communist propaganda. Because
Oh
the
yeah, I could
ANC, what
vouch
people
for
do not
Norse mythology is definitely not a communist.
Yeah. What
But yeah.
people don't realize is that the ANC is a communist organization. The upper echelon of the ANC, what they call the Big Six, are all communists. They're all hardcore 80s revolutionary communists. They developed a strategy called the People's War, which they learned. So, for instance, the previous president was trained in Moscow by the KGB in counterintelligence. And Nelson Mandela was trained here in Warsaw, in the Warsaw Pact during those days as a terrorist, as a bomb maker, and given other skills by the communists. Many of them were trained in China, trained in Vietnam. So they were all hardcore communists. So Mao developed a strategy of, shall we say, what he called the People's War, but it was a format to use extreme violence, extreme terror to destabilize the population while utilizing a very, very sophisticated form of propaganda. They did this very, very successfully. They were aided and abetted by all sorts of wonderful, I don't know, previously Norse countries like Sweden, who cheered for them. And then they took over the country in a coup, a communist coup, of course. And the country has seen massive decline and massive, massive increases in violence since then. But we can go through that another day. But understand, this means that when I said falling for communist propaganda, it's not the same as calling you a communist. So I hope that clarifies. So,
Well, Norse mythology just sent a super sticker for $20. So yeah, thank you. I think that's very much clarified, and I think Norse mythology is very much enjoying your work.
okay, thank you. So hopefully
But
that
yeah.
clarifies. Look, please do not mistake me. I'm the guy you paid not to get killed. I am not the guy you paid to go and do apologetics. If you were worried that someone was going to murder you, you paid me to make sure that didn't happen. Do not mistake me for being someone I am not. Please don't. That would be a mistake. Right. Okay, so moving on. So makoraba, the what? Ma to mu. Now, makoraba, the term makoraba, is easily derived from mukariba, right?
Mm-hmm.
The two are very,
Yeah.
very similar. I mean, would you agree that these are very, very similar? So the mukarib is one who serves. So think of the Abd al-Malik, the servant of the king, the slave of the king. But if you are the king, then you are the slave of the god that you serve. And the Muqarrib is the older term for Abd al-Malik. So what became the Abd al-Malik was previously the Muqarrib. Now the Muqarribs were all in Yemen, in Sabbah.
Yeah. Yeah.
These were the kings, the leaders of Yemen, these moon god worshippers. They were the slaves of the king. The king happened to be either the king at the time, but that king was himself a Muqarrib. The king himself was called Muqarrib, the slave of Allah, the moon god. Then makoraba is easily derived from mukariba, makoraba. So I would think this is just an anglicization or Latinization of the term mukarib.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So the mukarib is also a priest king who served the will of Allah, Al-Makkah. Al-Makkah was also known as Allah. Al-Makkah was Allah.
And then
Okay.
Lloyd, something as basic as Muhammad's father already being called Abd Allah, right? Slave of Allah before Allah Islamically was known.
Correct.
So there was definitely a worship of Allah happening.
Exactly. Sorry, I just got to silence my phone. I didn't realize it was on noise
Sure.
making mode. Right. So yeah. So understand. I Sheikh Bayadi. Yeah, sorry, man. I get a little annoyed sometimes. Yeah, talk is cheap, right?
No. This is understandable. But yeah, and again, I hope you're not getting too much stick on my channel. Again, like we've told people before, this is stay on topic. There's other things we can go on to, but worldviews here, whether you're an atheist or Christian, doesn't matter. We're looking at the historical roots of Islam. So
Yeah. So under Islam, the caliphate or the Khalifa, the leader, he was the Amir al-Muqminin. So very briefly, I'm going to deviate. Well, we're going to talk about this, right? So now, remember we just said that a deen is political, right? A deen is a
Hmm.
political system. It's a totalitarian political system. The Amir al-Muqminin was the commander of the believers. This was a political role, right?
Okay.
So Muslims, before they were called Muslims, for the first 200 years or so, were called the Mu'mineen, the believers, a very broad term. They were the
Mm.
commander of the believers, and then eventually they adopted the term Muslimin. But the Amir, the Caliph, was also the commander, which is a military title, right?
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, now the Muqarrib was a priest king, but he had a third role, a warlord. He was a
Okay.
warrior priest king because the moon god is a warrior god, is a war god. All the moon gods are war gods. So
Right.
they were
Okay.
warrior priest kings, and Muhammad was a warrior priest king.
Hmm. Okay.
He revived the same concept from Yemen. And the job of the Muqarrib had, well, his job was to unify all the tribes under him, and Muhammad did the very same.
Yeah.
So,
Precisely. Precisely. And the whole concept of caliph, I'm sure we'll come up with that in more detail. Oh, yeah, you're about to. Go ahead.
yeah, so the Amir al Muslimin, okay, so what happens is the Almoravids, they were a subsect of, I believe, the Abbasids. They first called themselves the Muslimin because they wanted to carve out their own niche identity, right?
Okay.
Because the overarching title at the time was the Amir al Muqminin, just the believers, this general term. And they wanted their own individual identity. And eventually, what happened was, you see, the Abbasids called themselves the Muqminin. And then, of course, which was the title of the caliphs, the believers. The Almoravids, this little smaller group, they wanted to separate themselves. And eventually, the two terms switched. And eventually, when they split off from what I think was a sort of heretical Jewish Christian sect,
Hmm.
they eventually split off, and then they all seem to have adopted the term the Muslimin, and Islam became
Okay.
the common term.
Okay.
Right. So let me see. How long would you like to go for? Because we can go for a little while. I mean, we just check where I am slide wise. So then,
Yeah, sure. So we are about to hit the 2 hour mark. We've obviously gone on a couple of tangents, so I'm happy to push through a little bit longer if you are, Lloyd.
yeah, sure. I'm happy as long if the audience is there and you're happy, I'll go on for a while. It's no problem.
Yeah, sure. Guys, if you're happier, we will push the stream just above 2 hours because we have kind of talked about other things and cleared some things up in the chat in the meantime. So, yeah, if you guys are all happy to stick around, we're here for some more.
Yeah, right. So Malik. So then eventually the term Malik comes along. Abdul Malik. Okay, Muluk,
Mhm.
Muqarriba. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So in the first millennium BC, the political leaders were called the Maliks, the MLK. Right? They created a commonwealth occupying most of South Arabia. Right? They took the title Muqarrib Sib, the Muqarrib of the Sabaeans, the
Oh,
Muqarribs.
interesting. Garib of the Sabaeans. Okay.
Right? And the Muqarriban were the special retainers of the ruler. He had, his special envoys. And
Mm.
Muqarrib, notice the term actually appears, I believe, in the Quran, but it means a unifier, someone who unifies, and a sovereign superior to the kings. He's a great sovereign. He's an emperor.
Yes. Okay. And he's a unifier as well. That's very telling.
Yeah, he's a unifier. Yeah. And you have many impressive buildings in South Arabia that were temples dedicated to pagan deities, and they all bore the title Muqarrib, who combined the functions of prince and priest. You see, so there's no separation between
Mm.
church and state.
Right. Okay. And that concept has been ingrained since back then. So yeah, okay, fine. There can possibly, I mean that probably explains Islam's situation today because there possibly logically cannot be any separation.
Yeah, there is no separation. So Muqarrib, priest king, but it misses out the warrior aspect. But the king,
Mm.
one of his roles is to act as warrior. So I think it's just the plural romanized Muqarraba, Makaraba. I think the derivation is really just this. What happened was they knew that in Yemen they had the Muqarribs, the Muqarraba, right, the
Hmm.
Muqarriba, and of course this was just in the Greeks. They just heard Muqarraba, Makaraba, and just wrote it down as that.
Okay, wow. So you're saying that's the Latinized version, right? Romanized version,
That's what I
sorry.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
think. And I just want to mention the word ad, joining
Mm.
together. This is the Arabic term from Uhud, a written designation of succession left by Caliph from the time of the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik onwards. They changed the term, they
Okay.
Arabized it. Okay.
Mm.
Now, there's covenant with men and there's the believers, right? And then they speak of political enactments and land which has capitulated before conquest. So again, you've got this just this political idea, right?
Yeah,
So there's
very
just an
much
idea
so.
of politics, right? But notice also the idea of mysticism is heavily embedded in Islam, and it's not very well known. Even I don't know it that well. But whenever you go into the encyclopedia, you'll find that there's constantly the same word has a mystical or occult meaning, right?
Okay.
Mysticism, this is the covenant, okay? So well, I'm not, this is not much depth here, but once you go into it, you'll find that magic plays a huge role in Islam, right?
Wow, okay.
Okay, Muqarrab. So they speak of the Muqarrab of Sabbah. He erected the wall of the Awam, the house of Al-Maq, okay? And which meant, they think it meant place of refuge, and you have place in the wall of the temple. So they speak of this, the Muqarrabs at the house of Al-Makkah. So the Muqarrabs were associated with the house of Al-Makkah, right? They managed the temples. Now notice, in the Quran, you have the Sabiqun, the foregoers, right? And you have in the Quran, in chapter, I think this is 56, verses 10 to 11, you have, well, Sabiqun or Sabiqun Muqarribun. This is actually used in the Quran as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Wow, okay.
How could we not be superior to the angels since we preceded them? The Sabaknahum from Sabbah. Sabaknahum. I just thought it's very, very interesting to find this reference here.
That is very interesting indeed.
The
That's
Sabi.
pretty mind-blowing.
And Muhammad is called in the Hadith, he's called the Sabi.
Yes, he is. He very much is. Okay, well, Lloyd, you're low-key like blowing my mind right now. So we're just trying to process.
Okay.
This is crazy.
Yeah, so some of these, I haven't had time to dig down every rabbit hole, but if someone who wants to dig into this and go and look further, I mean, there's a lot to be unpacked here, a lot to be seen, right? So South Arabia was led by Muqarrab, a sovereign superior to the kings, whose name means unifier, okay? And then you've got the temple of Al-Makkah associated with them. So the king had a big temple associated with him. So Muhammad had to have a temple associated with him. And then in South Arabia, the kingdom of Sheba had a capital of Marib. He's given the title of Muqarrab, and then you have Solomon and the queen of Sheba, and so on. And yeah, so
is that why, Lloyd, sorry, do you think that story of Queen Sheba where her whole throne was lifted and sent to Solomon's temple, was that just, and like the reference to gold in terms of their temples, and like do you think that was because Sheba, that entire region, that temple was so heavily revered and renowned, as in people were trying to come up with rival temples all the time, right?
I think so. That would make sense, because even apparently Abraha tried to make a rival church.
Exactly. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. There seems to be something of that nature there. It does seem to have something. I'm going to skip over this.
Sure.
And then Muqarrab, priest, kings, or federators, right? So again, it's a political title, right? And the title was replaced in the 4th century by Malik, or king. And it's the title of the ruler who held primacy over the tribes, linked by a covenant, like the Shahada.
Yeah. Right? Wow. Okay. This is really funny because Dee was just saying here, magic still plays a part. Shahada is magic words.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I missed that. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, so so in other words, there was a political authority that resided with one leader, the Malik, and he was appointed as a Muqarrab of a council of tribal leaders. Muhammad took over that whole function. So hegemon, I'll skip over that, but just it's a political military dominance. Okay.
Yeah.
So hegemon, it's just basically you've got dominant political power. Okay, that's a hegemon. Now I want to mention this. Okay, so Hubal. Let's talk about Hubal for a little bit. Let's jump into Hubal.
Let's do it.
Hubal,
yeah.
He was a god worshipped in pre-Islamic Arabia. Now we saw earlier that Muhammad was consecrated to Hubal by his grandfather. When Muhammad was born as a baby, he was, according to the Islamic narrative, taken to the Kaaba, and his grandfather consecrated him to the god Hubal. Okay, so Hubal, he who is Baal. In pre-Islamic Makkah, there was a temple to the moon god Hubal, and according to the Sirah, the biographers of Muhammad, or the Gospels of Muhammad, Hubal is also called Allah. He is the central god in the Kaaba, right? The central god. Now there are two. Okay, so there are two Greek manuscripts that call him Karibael, right? So just the Latinized version of it. So I mean, the Latinized versions do change as you go from language to language,
right?
And the name represents a transcription of the Sabaean name Karibal. Karibal, you might remember the Muqarrabs, the Muqarrabal, Karibal. So a Karib, and then a Karib is blessed by or following God, and the muqarrab is one who is blessed by or one who follows. The muk prefix is added to this to be the one who follows. The Abdal Malik, the muqarrib.
Right. Okay.
So the Karibal, Karib of Baal, blessed by or following Allah, Allah in this case being Baal, who Baal.
Right. Okay.
So the Muqarrib, do you understand? Muqarrib is one who follows Baal, the slave of the god Baal.
Right.
So that's what they have here.
Gotcha.
It was a royal name shared by South Arabian rulers and means blessed by or following Baal. Does that make sense? Does that logic work for you?
Yeah. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, but yeah, very much so. What you're saying makes sense.
All right. So now what you have is the term hu. So he's called hu Baal. Okay. And hu, also huwa, it means he. It's a pronoun. So just like you have the tetragrammaton, the Jews had the tetragrammaton. They didn't want to say the name of God, so they would call him the Lord or other names, like, so that as not to use his name.
Yeah.
Right. So the Sufis, who are the spiritual elite within Islam, it's a name of or for God in Sufism. Literally, it's taken from the Hebrew and Arabic for the English third person. It's used to avoid attribution of grammatical gender to Allah. Okay. So basically, if you don't want to say the name of the God, right, just like the tetragrammaton, what do they call it? I can't remember what the Jews say, but the Jews will say the Lord, for instance, because they don't want to say the name Yahweh.
Yeah.
Right. They'll say Hashem. For instance, the Jews will say Hashem.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll say the Lord because you don't want to say the name Yahweh.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you don't want to say
Yahweh
the name
was
of
almost
God.
too sacred to even take that name. Yeah.
Correct. Okay, so that's the traditional belief. Now, Muhammad grew up in that milieu. He grew up within that religious environment. So, Baal.
And even in Sufism, sorry, Lloyd, there is that tendency to, when you're trying to get into that mode of dhikr, or like remembering God, they will constantly add the suffix hu to his name over and over again to get into a deep state of trance.
Correct. No, actually, I'm surprised that you know that Sufism is, that's interesting. But yeah, the Sufis, ritual magic. There's a lot going on there. That's a story to unpack for another time. But that's when this story gets all David Icke on us, and
I betcha. Yeah.
Right. So notice though that Allah is just a title. It's not a name. Right. So I think it's similar to this idea of the tetragrammaton. They don't want to say the name, so they used Allah instead of calling him Hubal.
Yeah,
right?
He
who is Baal. Okay, it means he who is Baal. Let's have another look at this word hu. Let's have a closer look. Hawi, plural, hawiyun or huwa means an itinerant mountebank. Mountebank means conman.
Oh, wow, okay.
So huwa,
snake charmer or a
conman. Mountebank means conman. Hold on. Meaning, let's have a look here. Let's have a look at the term. The very first one. Someone who sells quack medicines from a platform to beguile or transform by trickery.
Okay, wow.
That's what a mountebank is. So huwa, the name that they use for Allah, unfortunately happens to be the same name as you use for a con man who tricks you.
That's why he's the best of the deceivers, isn't he?
Yeah. Allah is a makkar. Makkar is a deceiver. He's a liar and a deceiver, correct. So I don't know if that's a meaningful coincidence, but there might be something to it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Jojo is very, very hurt because he's not trying to say that he was afraid and scared. That's why I had to delete all these comments.
Yeah, I saw something previously as well. I thought I'd look into it after this stream because I can't really focus at the same time. But yeah, apparently it's they were deleted for a reason to do with safety or something.
Yeah, no, definitely safety. Sure. Okay, so the Quraysh had an idol well in the middle of the Kaaba called Hubal. Hubal seems very important in Islam. Okay, an idol. Then if you notice here, Hubal was an image in the middle of the Kaaba. Indeed, the greatest of their images. Oh my golly, so Muhammad's tribe worshipped Hubal. And it's referred to that blah, blah, blah. And they used to call, arise Hubal, make our religion victorious. So instead of shouting Allahu Akbar, they would shout Hubalu Akbar.
Wow, okay, yes.
Right, and then
because
they
there's that thing as well,
using,
right? Allahu Akbar. I don't want to get this wrong, but the meaning that we're told is like God is great is wrong because it's actually like
bigger.
Yes, exactly.
Larger
yeah.
than, we have a bigger rock than you.
Precisely. My rock is bigger than yours, kind of thing.
Correct. No, exactly. That is true. That is correct. So notice if they took the Jewish custom to not use the name of God, they would call him Allah, their God, instead of using his name. That's why
Yeah,
Allah is the God with no name.
yeah, precisely. It's almost like a stand-in name for Hubal, right?
Correct. Right. And then Abdul Muttalib was praying to Allah, and Abdullah Muttalib stood by Hubal praying to Allah. So Allah is, the way it's written is very odd. You'll find that they do this weird sort of writing style, but Hubal is Allah. Hubal was called Allah.
Right. Okay, yeah.
And Hubal was in the middle of the Kaaba. And Hubal stood by a well. Okay. And then notice Abdul Muttalib, Abdullah was Abdul Muttalib's favorite son. He was the father of the apostle of Allah. And Abdul Muttalib stood by Hubal. Right. So Hubal comes up a lot. He's the greatest and most revered of the Qurayshi idols.
I was just
And
going to
if they
say,
want
so
to
he's
circumcise a boy,
sorry. I was going to say, so clearly Hubal was obviously, we can assume that the largest idol within the Kaaba when Muhammad went to destroy them.
Yeah, correct. As you know, Muhammad was pointing his stick and chanting, and then the idols would fall over and destroy themselves. So Abdul Muttalib, yeah, he was waving a stick like Harry Potter. And then before Hubal, in the middle of the Kaaba, where he stood and prayed to Allah. So understand, Abdul Muttalib took Muhammad when he was born, before Hubal, in the middle of the Kaaba, and he prayed to Allah. So Muhammad's grandfather took Muhammad and consecrated him to Hubal.
Damn, okay.
And then they try to find a foster mother for him who happened to be an Ethiopian. So an Ethiopian Christian woman. So,
yeah.
And then he abstained
Who
from...
would have spoken Ethiopic, right?
Correct. And she was with him until his death.
Wow,
She was with him from the time he was born. So Ayman was with him apparently until the time he died. So she was the closest woman to him. His mother wasn't there. She was the one woman who was with him continuously through his life.
We can assume a good amount of influence. For sure, yeah. and a good understanding of the Ethiopic language by Muhammad as well.
Correct. So Muhammad was consecrated. So now notice that now they rejected the idea of Christianity. They rejected Judaism. They wanted to find the original religion of Abraham. But notice they say here, Zayd bin Amr abstained from idols and animals that had died, blood and things offered to idols. This is actually, oddly enough, taken from the 7 laws of Noah, which are the precursor to the 10 commandments.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This actually is from the 7 laws of Noah. This is taken from that understanding, the Jewish understanding of the early law before the Mosaic law. Because before the law of Moses, what was the law? Well, that would be the law of Noah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And 5 of the laws of Noah are word for word in the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are just an extension of those. So here he's actually talking about the 7 laws of Noah, which is taken straight out of Judaism, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah, most definitely.
And then, of course, none of you follows the religion of Abraham but I. So clearly, they're stealing from Judaism, but they're rejecting Judaism at the same time. And also, am I to worship one Lord or 1,000? If there's many as you claim, I renounce Allah and Al-Uzza. So Muhammad and his friends used to worship Allah and Manat and Al-Uzza. And I will not worship Hubal, though he was our Lord in the days when I had little sense.
Wow, okay. Although he was our Lord in the days when I had little sense, right? So can we assume then, let's just say even with this almost imported pantheon now or whatever's happening as things are changing, Hubal is the chief god, and then you've got Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat?
Yeah, those were the Nabatean gods. They were brought. Now, the thing is that, oddly enough, Hubal was an immigrant from Syria.
Right.
Okay. One of these guys, Zayd bin Amr or someone, I'll get to that story in a second.
Sure.
So what happens is, okay, here it is. Hubal, a 3rd century immigrant from Syria. As for the introduction of idolatry among the Arabs, the explanation currently in favor places the responsibility on Amr bin Luhay. He brought back to Mecca from Syria an idol of Hubal.
Oh, damn.
Others say from Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is Al-Uzza, there's another story that says the very same about Al-Uzza. She was brought from Syria, which means very possibly that Hubal and Al-Uzza are the same.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so that would, okay, but so Hubal would in that sense be amalgamated with that god, and would it still hold the primary position? Because this is the god that Muhammad's father himself chose to go in.
Oh man, I don't know, but it could be. So, look, this is hard. I mean, it's really hard to determine, but the chronology is broken. It's very hard to make a proper chronology out of this. Okay. So yeah, it depends.
And I mean, also, as you said, that names get like flipped around and interchangeable at some
Genders
points,
get
right?
switched.
Genders get
They switch
switched, yeah.
genders. It's really confusing. But there's just this interesting story, right? There's just this story.
Yeah.
Like Dean Kruger, no, you do not learn this in the madrasa. You should read look in my folder in the madrasa manuals. The madrasa manuals are themselves very interesting to read. I've read a couple. And then notice, idolatry is not, now, according to Abu Zayd and others, okay, this is within the Encyclopedia of Islam, if I recall, it says here, idolatry is not directly opposed to Tawhid in Islam. No one would be stupid enough to identify the creator with a piece of wood. According to Islamic scholars, the error of the idolaters is that they imagine that Allah has a form.
Okay, that's interesting to me as well, because I mean, even in the Quran, like they talk about God's shin and what you'll see of God in the hereafter, but also God's hands. God's got like descriptions of two right hands as well.
He has two right sides. In fact, he has two
Yeah.
right sides, therefore he has two right hands.
Yeah, exactly. And something about when his shin will be displayed as well on the day of judgment or something relating to that. But even God in a form like fashion has come through all the way to the supposedly monotheistic Quran that we have today. But this is so over here they're saying that nobody would be stupid enough to mix the real concept of God with something like a piece of wood. Is that why Tawhid and idolatry aren't necessarily directly opposed, because nobody could think of doing such a thing?
Well, no one would say that idol is the God. It's a representative. It's a representation of the God, but it's not the God itself. So they're saying basically that idolatry does not oppose the major doctrine. I mean, this concept of Tawhid, right, which is so critically fundamental to Islam, this belief, right? Apparently, idolatry, according to these scholars, is not opposed to, Islam is not opposed to idolatry.
To
in theory.
Tawhid, that's crazy. I mean, to somebody like me, Tawhid and idolatry are polar opposites, absolutely at the other end of the spectrum from each other. And that's why the biggest sin in Islam is shirk, which is associating anything with God. And in my mind, that would include idols.
Yeah, John Stum. So has Jojo Freelance been deleting his comments? Come on, man. That's a sign of guilt, if you ask me. If you go and delete 20 or 30 or 40 comments, then clearly you've, it interferes with the logical progression of the chat. Yes, John, I would agree with you. So anyway,
And
so
sorry,
yeah.
Lloyd, one question. Naz is asking, was Muhammad's mother Amina from Syria? Amina?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. Honestly, I wouldn't know. I'd have to go and look. I mean, I'd have to go and look. I mean, this was months of work, and I'm using about 60 different references here, so it's really hard to read them all. I need to concentrate on certain sections as I go through.
Yeah, that's it, Jasmine. The majestic shin will be revealed, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Babylonian moon god Sin, the correct pronunciation according to the scholars that I've listened to, the Babylonian moon god Sin, that's also known as Makkah, apparently the correct pronunciation of the name is Shin, just out of interest. Shin.
Oh, okay. That's interesting in itself. That's another wormhole we could be going down.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a different language entirely, but apparently Shin is how you pronounce the name Sin.
Oh,
Shin.
interesting. Okay.
So yeah, on this, I should notice there is a 3rd or 4th century. I can't remember exactly. There's a guy called Plotinus, and he's famous as the founder of the Neoplatonic movement. He postulated a god he called the One. And if you compare on a table the qualities of Plotinus the One, he's a pagan, and if you look at the Gnostic monad, right, which is this mystical creation that has no physical form, it's right, just the Gnostic concept of God, and then you have Plotinus the One, and then you list the qualities of Allah next to the One. They're identical. I have a table on that. I can show it next time. Just remind me next time to bring it up.
Yeah, please, I will. That's so interesting.
But you'll actually see that Allah is an identical copy of Plotinus the One. You'll see that there's a 1-to-1 correlation between their qualities. So he's basically taken the concept of Allah from Plotinus the One, which is a pagan concept of a monotheistic God. And,
a formless Gnostic pagan concept of a God. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get into that next time.
There's that as well. Just remember Plotinus. So origins of Hubal. So just so you know, the Nabateans worship 3 female deities, Alat. This I took from Wikipedia, if Wikipedia is the Smithsonian institution. So the Nabateans worshipped three female deities: Alat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Okay, so the Nabateans who lived in Petra seem to have worshipped in particular the goddess Al-Uzza, who was termed the mightiest. Now, there is evidence that Al-Uzza was brought from Syria. And I just find it odd that the Muslim sources state that Hubal was brought from Syria. So just kind of a weird coincidence. Are they the same? Are they different? Or was Syria just a place where they got all these gods from?
Yeah, fair questions. All fair questions.
Yeah. And okay, just a little bit of interesting stuff here. So let me just see where I am so I can stop at a logical point.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to kind of round it up wherever you think.
The pagan Muhammad. So maybe we can stop around. I'll go like 3 or 4 more slides if that's okay.
Sure, let's do that.
That should be logical. Sure. So the Quran mentions 2 prophets that it claims were prophets from infancy, right? So in the Quran, 2 prophets were prophets from the time they were born. Of John the Baptist, okay, Quran says, take this book with strength, and we gave him al-hukm, the prophet office. That's technically the wisdom as a child. And of Jesus, they say, while an infant, he said, I am a servant of Allah. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. Now, of course, we know that the New Testament was written after the death of Jesus, right? Or after the ascension of Jesus, to use the technically correct term. So we know that Jesus didn't bring a book. He didn't go to God's library, take out a book, and when he left, he didn't hand out a book to each of his apostles, right?
Exactly.
It was written about him afterwards. Islam claims that Jesus was given a book.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
Literally almost as if he came bearing a book. Yeah.
And this Jesus is from the gospel of the infancy. So all of the stories, most of the stories within Islam can be traced to either Christian folktales, Jewish folktales, children's stories, as well as mystical tales, or they're taken directly out of Gnostic stories, Gnostic books, Gnostic gospels. Right?
That would make sense to me. Even as a lay ex-Muslim, that would make sense to me why there's so much kind of mumbo-jumbo confusion. And again, why they can make claims like, for example, about Jesus with that level of confidence here if they are extrapolating from things like the gospel of the infancy.
Correct. And also there's the Arabic gospel of the infancy and there's the gospel of the infancy. There's a couple of them. There's a handful of them with similar names. There's a whole bunch of them. So you can trace just about every story. I have a set of slides on that I've been working on for a while. So you can trace every single one of those Quranic stories to a pre-existing Jewish or Gnostic story.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, and sometimes word for word, sometimes very close. Otherwise, sometimes it's like identical, same story. So this is from the gospel of the infancy, and also the John is taken from the Mandaean Gnostic teaching. The Mandaeans, they're a Gnostic group. They're called today, the Mandaeans are today called the, oh, good grief, they exist in Iraq. They actually exist today. I can't remember, just for some reason I've forgotten their name. They're given a different name. Or they're called the Mandaeans today. Anyway, this group exists in Iraq today. They are Gnostics. They're supposedly the last existing Gnostic sect, but Islam claims to be Gnostic. They revere John and they hate Jesus.
If anyone knows the name that they currently go by, please feel free to drop it in the chat.
Yeah,
that's really
I don't know how I forgot it. It's just very odd that it skipped my mind now. Well, they're called something else in the Quran, and they call them Mandaeans today. So they're given a different name, but it'll come to me. Allah says to Muhammad, did he not find thee an orphan and give thee shelter, find thee wandering and in error guide thee? Because Muslims like to claim that Muhammad is a Muslim from birth.
So he's wandering in error, though. Yeah,
but he's wandering in error. And of course, they try to fudge all of this. They try to claim, for instance, so the Quran uses the words dalan and hada. And these references to him are basically implies that he's found by Allah in a false religion and guided to the true religion. So even according to the Quran, he was a pagan. But they try to claim that he was a Muslim from birth. In fact, there are wonderful stories of Muhammad's mother is at home and she's about to give birth, and a light shines from her vajayjay all the way to Busra in Syria. In other words, she shines a light 1,300 kilometers from Mecca to Syria, and this light shining out of her private parts lights up the palaces in Busra in Syria. No, literally.
It's true. No, it's true. It's true. What you're saying is so true. It just sounds even more ridiculous when you hear it out loud. I read the exact same thing.
Yeah. So they.
That's actually that's the real foundations, by the way, of Muhammad's birth. In case you think we're having a laugh, Son Yejin, thank you so much for clarifying. You were right, Lloyd. They are still called the Mandaeans.
Yeah. So they still call the Mandaeans. Yeah, they called something else in the Quran. I need to figure out what they called. It'll come to me. So, but anyway, notice now there are very few details of Muhammad's life with his first wife Khadija. Okay. And of
Mhm.
course, she's supposed to be 40 years old, but that's a magic number, just like Muhammad was 40 when he got inspiration. That's a magic number.
Mhm.
And what happens is, though, that according to even like Ibn Kathir and others, they state that the narration that claims that Khadija was 40 is taken from the weakest of narrations, and in fact, it is Maudu,
Okay. So
right?
by their own logic and by their own standards, right, Lloyd? Not by our standards,
Yeah,
by theirs. Yeah.
correct, by their standards. So she's actually 25 or 26 or 28 or 32. They can't make up their minds, but she's somewhere between 25 and 28. Those are the accepted ages, 25 or 28. Those are the commonly
Okay.
accepted. Because how did she have 6 children at the age of 40 living in the 7th century Arabia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So they
that's
can't
true.
reconcile that. But notice in the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the Mujtahid Mutlaq, the perfect, absolute scholar who's never wrong, right? You cannot be wrong. Muhammad says to his wife, "Oh Khadija, this is from the founder of the school of fiqh, the Hanbali school. I will not worship Allah nor al-Uzza. By Allah, I will not worship them again." And Khadija says, "Leave them." And the neighbor adds, Allah and al-Uzza were the idols which Muhammad and Khadija used to worship and then go to bed. So we know
Mhm.
for a fact he was a pagan.
Yeah,
Later on,
there
they
was
call him the
even this
Sabi.
story,
Yeah,
right? Sorry if where there was like this
sure.
curtain or there was illustration of one of these idols outside his house, and therefore Gabriel didn't enter. So I think I mean, and there were idols in their own home, and Muslims would say, "Oh, well, Muhammad was just guarding those for somebody else because he wasn't actually worshiping them himself,"
Correct.
which is
Correct. It's like the police catch you smoking a blunt and you say, no, it's not mine. I was just holding it for someone else while they went to the toilet.
yeah, exactly. How convenient.
Yeah. Um, so for instance, let's have a look here. Um, let's have a look at
Just on, yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Lloyd.
No, please go on.
No, I was just saying, this is what Ishaq Ibrahim saying that re the light shining out of the Vijayjay all the way to lighting up the palaces in Basra. This is why they did not invent street lights. They have natural divine lights. That's
Yeah,
very true.
exactly. So they didn't need it. Now notice this is Da'if Bukhari, Volume 1, Book 7, Hadith 340. For instance, someone mentioned the Sabians, right? Notice, so Muhammad leaves this pagan worship. Apparently he leaves that behind, but he still incorporates a lot of those elements into modern Islam. As we know, a lot of these Sabaean elements are still there. But it's possible he then becomes this heretic, this Gnostic heretic, this pseudo-biblical, pseudo-Jewish, pseudo-Christian heretic, right? So notice Muhammad is literally called a Sabi, right? Muhammad is
Yes.
literally called a Sabi. She asked where. They said to Allah's messenger, said, "Do you mean the man who was called the Sabi with a new religion?" So they brought her to the Prophet. So he is called a Sabi. And the Sabi, it's very inconclusive, unfortunately, whether it's the Sabaeans or the Sabians. It would
Mm,
seem this is probably the Sabians, right? Who
okay.
are the Mandaeans. Sorry, the Sabi, the Sabians, yeah. The Sabians are the Mandaeans, who are the Gnostics, who hate Jesus, revere John the Baptist, and they their prophet is Enoch from the book of Enoch.
Right.
So 2 men met me and took me to the man who is called the Sabis. And the Sabis are a sect of people of the scripture who recite the book of Psalms. And we know that they are Gnostics and they are heretics, according to standard Christian doctrine.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if Muhammad's
So
a Sabi, then Muhammad is a Mandaean. He would then be, well, a mixture of whatever it is, pagan slash Gnostic heresy.
right. Okay. Yeah, which would make sense as well, because I mean, even by the Islamic narrative, they do have that story embedded into the beginnings of Islam, where Muhammad did turn his back on the religion of his ancestors. And then it's followed up by stories like him going to the Kaaba and smashing the idols and then asking them those questions. So, I mean, there is that angle, right? That he was the one turning his back on the religion of his forefathers, whatever that may have been. Um, because so Idolbreaker here says, we don't claim Muhammad was Muslim since birth. He was guided. Um,
He needs to tell those other Muslims that tell me otherwise. You guys need to get your stories straight, buddy.
yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. You need to get the story straight, because some people would say that, I mean, we've gone back to it, right? We've gone back to Abraham and Adam being the first Muslims in the first place. So Muhammad being the light of the world, the reason for everything being created, and then having to be guided later on. And I mean, obviously, we know who they are worshipping before that, and I think Lloyd has broken that down very well. But again, the wording of this here, it's just way too
Sure.
convenient. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, go on. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, you're right. And besides, if Muhammad knew from birth that he was guided, how come he was frightened, wanted to kill himself? How come he had no idea until 40 that he was the chosen one? If he was from birth, if he knew exactly what was going on. I mean, the stories don't mesh, doesn't make sense. So I'll wind down here. I'll finish shortly. So we'll just finish with the pagan Muhammad.
Sure.
Okay, so Muhammad says in his younger days he had sacrificed an ewe to Al Uzza, and Yakut al Hamawi or Hamawi in the article on Al Uzza in his geographical dictionary says Said Abu Mundir said it has reached us that the Prophet made mention of Al Uzza one day and said, I made an offering of a reddish white ewe to Al Uzza when I was following the religion of my people. Now, notice how
Right.
that contradicts the Sirah, when Muhammad was the light of the world. Muhammad was the first creation of Allah, was there with Allah before creation, in fact.
Exactly.
And
And that's the problem. I think that's the problem which idol breaker and stuff have issues kind of dealing with the cognitive dissonance because within your own sources, they are saying multiple things here. It's shedding light on pre-Islamic Arabia, the pagan nature of it as well. But then also you're saying that the throne that God sits on is also embellished with the light of Muhammad, and every
correct.
human being to ever walk the earth as a prophet or the first creation by God was embellished with that same light. So how could that same man then be so misguided for most of his life? It makes no sense.
Exactly. So while I'm here, I want to go back to something that we discussed previously. I just want to bring it up again.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so
Roaring Man says, don't Muslims claim everyone was born a Muslim? Exactly. Well, they
they
claim
do.
that your natural fitrat, like your natural inclination, is to be a Muslim.
Well, don't forget, if the soul of Muhammad is what infuses and gives the holy men of all the other religions their holiness, your soul is effectively a little piece of Muhammad,
Yeah.
because all of creation was made by Allah using the light of Muhammad. So
And
you
for
are a little.
Muhammad, as well as you said.
Correct. Correct. So I spoke of this last week. I mentioned this, the ilm al-badi. Now, remember, Islamic sciences. You must have all have heard of the term the Islamic sciences,
Yeah, very
right?
scientific that.
Islam has a lot of sciences. None of them are about science. They're all about rhetoric.
Mhm.
Okay,
None of them fit the description of science, but sure.
science, correct. So the
Mhm.
the ilm al-badi is the branch of rhetorical science. So it's one branch of rhetorical science. Other branches are the adab al-jadal, for instance, which is the branch called propaganda. Okay, Dawa is another science. Dawa translates literally as propaganda and pretense. Okay, Dawa is not evangelism, it is propaganda and pretense. Propaganda is by definition false, right? It's going to be obviously misleading, words. But notice it's the branch of rhetorical science which deals with the beautification of literary style, the artifices of the ornamentation, artifice and ornamentation, and the embellishment of speech. Let's have a look at embellishment. Noun, an ornament or a decoration, a fictitious addition to a factual statement.
Yeah.
Embellishment means, you can see in this definition, a fictitious addition. Let's actually go and let's look up
Mhm.
artifice and embellishment quickly while we are here.
Yeah.
So, meaning of embellishment. I
And in
hope I
layman's
followed.
terms, just to put it out there, is probably like just adding a bunch of lies to spruce up a story or a narrative.
Right. Okay, I'll just take the very first one, Cambridge Dictionary.
Mhm.
So, fine. Something added to make a thing more beautiful and more interesting. Okay, so it's an embellishment. Okay, so he may be guilty of embellishment. Okay, but
Mhm.
let's have a look here and see. The truth doesn't need embellishment, but Islam certainly apparently has a science of embellishment.
Wow, that in
Okay,
itself speaks volumes. I mean, that's
yeah.
completely contrary to presenting
So
facts and evidence and
the,
science,
the
as it
reference
were.
I have here, I'm going to grab. This is from dictionary.com. I'm just going to go here and see the reference that I have. Embellishment. Ah, great. Okay, a fictitious addition to a factual statement,
There we
the
go.
act of embellishing.
Yeah.
Understand? So embellishment is to lie, basically. Let's look up artifice. Let's look up artifice. A clever trick or stratagem, a cunning device, trickery, cunning, ingenuity.
Yeah, it seems very on brand considering everything else that we've uncovered. Wow.
Yeah.
There we
So
go.
yeah. So basically, so now notice the last thing. Aluza is one of the three idols of the Kaaba, and she might have been
Yes.
the original. Abedi, that makes good sense. Yes. So now notice, if Al-Uzza is the original goddess and Hubal is the original god, then maybe there's, I don't know, there might be some kind of overlap there. There might be a mistake in the sources, but I mean, there's clearly some, but yeah, so you've got all these gods. And then also Muhammad had a couple of children, one called Manaf, okay, servant of Manaf. And in fact, his grandfather and great-grandfather or something, or his great-great-grandfather or whatever was called Manaf, which was the servant of Manaf, who happens to be an Arabian god. Right, pagan god. Manaf was an ancient idol venerated by the Quraysh, which means that he's right. Manaf, ancient idols like kept in the Kaaba. Okay, you have Manat, male and female. Okay, and then of course you've got these. Then even Baal had 3 daughters, just
Right.
like
Okay. Allah,
right, Manat
Hubal,
and Al
Manat.
Uzza,
Yeah.
the 3 cranes from the satanic verses.
The
So
Pharaonic. Yeah.
yeah, so this is Ugaritic evidence. This is from Canaan area, from Syria. And then I'll end up here. So the symbol for Makkah, this is Makkah here, the moon and the star Sirius. And he's known as Shin, Nanashwen, okay? And Makkah is the main god for Yemen and Action before Christianity, with Shams, the sun god. And Waq means love, okay? And Makkah might also mean love. It's just a quality of the god.
I see. Okay. So again, so they've all got their different attributes, but as you said earlier, it was the moon god that's also correlated with the warrior god, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why Allah has 99 names, because all of these gods had their qualities. People would emphasize a certain quality of the same god. And there's even an accusation, I think it's Quran 38:5, where people say, are you just taking all the gods and rolling them into one and calling it Allah? And that's basically what he did. He just took all the quality. That's why Allah does not have 99 names. Allah has about 500 names. If you look at the list of 99 names, every scholar makes up his own list of qualities that he likes. So Allah has hundreds of names. Even Muhammad has about 250 names.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Which again, it is so telling of the fact that it's meshing all of the previous gods into that one. So kind of like the concept of that Ethiopian Tawhid church in a way, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's, so yeah. So taking the concept of 3 and unifying it almost.
Yeah. So yeah, perhaps we can end here. I think hopefully that was
Sure.
enlightening for the audience. So anything you'd like to add, I'll leave it open for you. And but hopefully this was new information that was helpful to everyone.
Most definitely. I think today we had a quite a lot of information thrown at us. I will definitely be watching this back as well, just to make sure it all kind of seeps in. But no, thank you so much, Lloyd. Again, as we move through this, the picture is just becoming clearer and clearer. Even areas that you're not entirely sure about, you can definitely start mapping what's happening here and the importation of certain gods. But just on your last point about the embellishment here, this is a really good comment as well. Islam uses the word science as an artifice, not the practical method of investigation that we have in the West, precisely. And that's why they get away with using the word science in that way. But as Lloyd showed us, that's not a branch of science as we know it today in the West at all. But it also is very it's very on brand with the rest of the Islamic sources, right? Even the science of you mentioned a lot of other different sciences, Lloyd, that in terms of the Islamic scholarship, but even just the science of hadith, for example, it's not even that scientific as a basis. It's like, how do you differentiate between an authentic chain of narration as opposed to a weak one? It's just the chain of command in that is, was there a liar at any point within that? Did he just lie on the one occasion, or did he lie on multiple occasions? And then they've had to do a whole science of the percentage of these. And I think, Lloyd, it was in one of your videos I actually heard you say something like even the Da'if hadiths are considered some percentage of accurate, which was still quite proportionally not that weak, if I'm not mistaken.
No, those are considered viable hadith. Give me one second. I should bring that up right now.
Okay, sure.
I didn't open the first time for some reason. There we go. Yes, I'll so on that question, someone asked, have I looked up Mahmadim, or the term Muhammadim?
Yes, I was just going to flag this to you next. Sure.
Yes, I actually do discuss that in one of my other discussions. The term Mahmadim, I think it means, you know what, I cannot remember offhand. Also, look, there's also the danger that I will make mistakes if I talk off the top of my head and not while looking at my notes. I mean, it's bad enough when you make a mistake when talking from notes, but it's much more likely to make a mistake when you don't have your notes in front of you.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
can, if you save that question, just remind me. I can prepare that for the next time, and we can actually talk about it, and I can show that. But
Sure.
it's so it depends. It's technically it's Jewish. It's Mahmadim or Mahmad. It comes from the root Mahmad. Let me try and find it. Just give me 1 sec. So let me actually make an attempt to find it.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Lloyd. And we do
Let me
really
make an attempt.
appreciate the fact that you kind of jump around for us as well. I appreciate that it's not easy at all. And you being asked these questions off the top of your head, you're like a walking encyclopedia, which you're not, and it's unfair to expect that of you. So thank you for actually taking the time to show us things that are slightly off topic as well.
You're welcome. No, I can't find it. I have to look in my notes because
Okay,
look, after this is
bring it
done,
up
it'll pop into my head just after I needed it. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. So while I'm on that, let me show you. This is from now. Muslims want to lie to us and tell us that. No, RC, certainly, I will look into that. I have covered it on previous shows. I have done it extensively, so I will go into that. But yeah, it's the term Mahmad. It's Mahmadim. It's in Strong's H something. If I could remember what the reference was, but it's in the Strong's Strong's Concordance. Let's actually, you know what? So since we are here, then let's look in Strong's Concordance.
K97, thank you. I'm very glad you enjoyed this today. And yeah, I know we have gone slightly over, guys, but I hope you are enjoying it. And yeah, Lloyd is here giving us his time, so I'm very honored.
Strong's Concordance. Okay, fantastic. Bible Hub. I would prefer to do this on the Blue Letter Bible, but 1 Kings 20 verse 6. Okay, awesome. I would prefer to do this in the Blue Letter Bible. Okay, I like using the Blue Letter Bible for various reasons because it's such an easy tool to use. I'd recommend it if you're going to do that kind of research. So Strong's H 4261. 4261. There we go. Okay, thanks. Is pleasant. So they try to say this is Muhammad. Okay, so Strong's H 4261. Let's go have a look. So they try to say that it's a masculine noun, Mahmad, and so it's Mahmad, right? Mahmad, and it means pleasant thing, pleasant, desire, desirable, pleasant thing, delightful. Okay, so it has multiple different. You can see all the verses where it appears, and they try to say that this is Muhammad. Now the problem in Ezekiel is writing about his wife, and his wife dies or something like that. And he's talking about his wife in Ezekiel. Now, the thing is, if Mahmad means Muhammad in the first verse, then it's got to mean Muhammad in the other 14 times or so that it appears.
Correct.
Right? And in various cases, for instance, there is Ezekiel of the prophet's wife. So Muhammad was then the prophet's wife.
Yeah.
So Muhammad was Ezekiel's wife here.
Okay? If you want it, then have it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So Muhammad is the wife of the prophet Ezekiel. And then also, God says in the Bible in various of these passages, for instance, he is going to destroy. Okay, he is going to destroy everything that you find to be Mahmad. So he says, I'm going to wipe out and destroy all of the Mahmad. Everything you find pleasant, I will destroy it. I will take it from you. Okay. So in other words, it actually talks about the destruction of Muhammad, the taking away of everything, the reduction
Funny
of
how they
sand.
never tell you that little reference, because that would mean the man himself as well, if you want to stick by their thought process.
Yeah, I actually have a discussion on this. I go through every single one of the places where it appears, and I show it in context, so you can see. And they try to claim that it's Muhammad, but the problem is that when you look at it, there's no way it makes sense. I mean, they speak of, and it's also about. I mean, it's in love poems and stuff like that, dealing with women, and you're like, okay, so Muhammad was a transgender cross-dresser.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And then to answer the last question you raised, this is about the Hadith, the grading of the Hadith. Now, this is a collaboration between Al-Azhar University, which is the most important and it's the most prestigious Islamic seminary in the world, as well as the Medina Munawwara Seminary, which is where Muhammad died, the city of the Prophet, Medina. So these scholars are doing a new translation of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani's Fath al-Bari. The Fath al-Bari is the tafsir. Just like you have tafsir of the Quran verses, you also have tafsir of Hadith. People don't realize they are actually tafsirs of the hadith collections. This specifically is the tafsir of Imam Bukhari, of the Sahih Bukhari. And they write here, these scholars, these are the best Islamic scholars in the world, all right, from the two of the top universities in the world. They say that removing weak hadith from works, from Islamic works, was not the example of the scholars. Otherwise, Imam Ibn Hajar would not have included them himself in the Fath al-Bari, okay, as sources to take knowledge from. Weak hadith are used to support opinions because a weak hadith with the words of the Prophet is preferred over pure opinion and personal reasoning, ijtihad reasoning. And this is the example set by all the scholars, including Imam Bukhari, who worked miracles, the miracle worker Imam Bukhari himself, who used them deliberately in his work Al-Adab al-Mufrad, that no one's ever heard of. They've only heard of the Sahih. He's got a couple of other works. The Sahih of Imam Bukhari is a collection of the Sahih specifically, not a collection of the only hadith that scholars should use. And the scholars say Sahih hadith is about 99 to 100% accurate. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is not what we're learning this from the very best scholars that have ever lived in Islam. This is from the top scholars that have ever lived, giants in Islam.
Yeah.
Right? So a Sahih hadith is 99 to 100% accurate. Now, if you ask Idolbreaker, he will tell you it's da'if, brother. You know, he will tell you it's da'if. He will insist.
Anything he doesn't like the sound of, he'll tell you it's da'if.
Correct. Okay. Now notice he's really saying it's altogether lovely, but I mean, if you look at the actual Greek, Hebrew, and you start going through it, it's pleasant, nice, and so on. So altogether lovely. He's saying that Ahmadiyyim translates as altogether lovely because that is what Ahmad Didat used to say. Ahmad Didat obviously wasn't reading it from the Strong's lexicon. He was simply saying what he liked. Now, a Hasan hadith has about an 85 to 99% chance of being a completely accurate hadith. Da'if has a 45 to 85% chance of being entirely accurate. Even a fabricated hadith, a completely false hadith, has up to a 45% chance of being accurate. And they qualify this. They say the grading it was given may have been wrong. The fabricator may have spoken the truth. Weak hadith should not be treated like fabricated hadith because an 85% chance of being accurate is a very high chance.
Exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go. Please go on.
That's what shocked me when I heard you say this the first time round, because I was like, a da'if hadith, if you push up the upper percentile to 85%, that's no joke. And the fact that what you've said earlier as well, that they said that even weak hadith are used to support opinions, meaning you don't do away with them entirely, or you don't just say I don't believe that, or that's a weak hadith. They are actually used to further strengthen other hadiths. And then again, as Lloyd was reading out here, you've got the further problem of saying that the grading it might have been given was wrong. So a da'if hadith could potentially be a Hasan or Say hadith, but also the fact that, as they said, the person who's fabricated previously might be telling the truth in this instance. The same thing, you have, issues in a court of law, for example. Do you negate their witness testimony completely, or could they be telling the truth on this occasion? So this is a lot of murky water here. It's not black and white, as Muslims like to say, it's either say or weak, and I don't believe it. And that's literally the modus operandi they use is, if I don't like what it says, it's weak and I don't believe it. But according to your own institutions and the most knowledgeable Islamic scholars known to the world, this is what they're saying.
Right. Now, and also it says if you received 85% on your test, would you throw that out saying that isn't worth anything? They're stating this is very likely 85% true. So they're saying don't toss it out. It's got 85% probability of being right. And they say even fabricated hadith are still studied because one scholar might grade it fabricated and another might grade that same hadith sahih.
Yeah, well, there we go. Exactly. So again, Lloyd, just by going with this, we can't even rule out da'if hadith at all. It would almost be wrong to, based on this conclusion.
Correct. In fact, if we go into the Sharia, so I'm going to close this. I'm just going to go into the Sharia.
Yeah.
So let's have a look here, since we're on about the Sharia now.
Yeah, and I'll let you go after this, Lloyd, I promise you.
Okay, so this is the words. So the Prophet said, okay, police be upon him. Okay, so, So the Prophet said, police be upon him. Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. The meaning of this hadith, although the hadith itself, notice this is from the Sharia, right? That's the Arabic on the right there. The meaning of this hadith, though the hadith itself is not well authenticated, being weak, it is true.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they've actually categorically said that this weak hadith is still true.
Yeah, they do speak about hadith at length here. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that just literally
Because they don't
consolidates the
have a
point.
Sahih hadith for this. There is no Sahih.
Mhm.
They've only got this weak one. That's the only one they have. And in context with all the other statements from Islam, they say, okay, this weak one is 100% legit. It's 100% true.
And exactly the same way that, growing up, we all heard this hadith of this woman who used to throw garbage at the Prophet, and he was so merciful towards her.
I
That
am so
apparently is
glad you raised that.
entirely
Let me solve that question for you. Okay, since we're here now then.
Yeah. Apparently that one is entirely fabricated, and yet they're willing to use that. So when you're taking a weak hadith and you're saying it's true.
I am so glad you asked. I'm going to show you, since we're here. This is a wonderful book written by a Muslim, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdullah Al-Ushan. It's called What is Commonly Spread But Not Proven from the Seerah of Prophet Muhammad, otherwise known as Famous But Unauthentic Stories about Muhammad.
Oh, wow. Famous but unauthentic. What is the point?
In other words,
Embellishment.
fake trash.
Fake trash,
Yes.
Exactly.
Let's have a look. Let's
Islamic
have a look at a couple.
science. Yeah.
Reports on his youth, his marriage to Khadija and period before prophethood. And then we see here, the story of the Jewish lady who threw garbage at the Prophet is a false narration.
There we go. Oh my days. There we go. And yet people actually cling on to this argument to show how nice the Prophet was and how merciful he was and how he was such a beautiful character and his morality. It's completely a false narration.
Yeah. Read number 38 as well. Just read that one for the audience.
The Prophet carried the luggage of a Jewish lady who wished to escape from Makkah after hearing of a man called Muhammad. An emotional but false narration. Wow. The lengths they have gone to make this man just kind of clear up all the blemishes. Yeah. He's helping her escape from a man named after his own name. What is going on?
Understand and notice, Idolbreaker is avoiding all the facts. He is purely off topic. I mean, if I would silence him for a while. But understand, he is completely off topic. He's refusing to listen to the evidence from his own scholars that he supposedly respects, reveres, and follows. Right? Yeah. So notice he won't talk about it. He doesn't engage with us. When has he once told us about where the body of the 90-foot tall Adam is buried in the Kaaba? Because we know it's very close to the Kaaba. It's within 30 meters of the Kaaba, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, we don't even need to dig. Just radar scan it. X-ray scan it.
Just radar scan it and find it. 90-foot skeleton and 300 bodies buried around the Kaaba of prophets still preserved. So notice, where are they? I mean, he's not answering that. He can prove Islam like that. They don't prove Islam. They attack Christianity. Understand? Yeah. They avoid talking about Islam because they know it's ridiculous.
They literally backed into a corner when it comes to evidence because they don't have any, and then they just rely on pure whataboutism. Like that's literally the most easy defense tactic they have, is just whataboutism, because they can't face the facts of their own scripture and ideology crumbling, and the fact that it doesn't historically stand up anymore. And we're showing that to the world bit by bit. So yeah, they actually have a lot to answer for, not just 90-foot skeletons, but these false narrations. Well, what is this all about? Do you have any answers to this? Can you show us that this story was true from somewhere? Flip the narrative, show us.
Yeah, so exactly. So Farish says literally what Idolbreaker is doing right now. So Idolbreaker, can you, as a good Muslim, can you verify all of this for us, please? Can you explain any of the things we've just discussed? And no, he has to dance. He has to tap dance.
Most definitely.
So this is what's called the Adab al-Jadal. Okay, let me just type it for you. I'm not going to go into that today, but Adab al-Jadal. Adab al-Jadal is disputation. It's a form of argumentation, right? So basically, it's based on So it's a form of deception. Oh, great. I spell very well, but I type extremely badly. So don't forget, dawah is propaganda. Okay.
Yeah.
Dawah is propaganda and pretense. Dawah is defined as propaganda and pretense. Okay, dawah is not evangelization. It is not spreading the religion through evangelization. It's a very specific word. Dawah just means effectively it's just propaganda and pretense. It's a secular word.
Yeah.
Now, it falls under something called hiyal. Okay, hiyal is a very specific form of lying. It is a very specific set of techniques, which are language-based techniques to deceive. Originally, it was used to defraud people in commercial transactions. The
Right.
earliest books on hiyal date to about 805. So they had this whole idea of how to use language to break contracts, but it's been expanded. Okay, so it was language used to break contracts. So also, it is language that they specifically use now. Instead of breaking commercial contracts, it's also used to break oaths, break promises. Okay,
Okay.
it was then expanded. It was
Yeah.
also a way to make a lie, to say something that sounds true, but you're able to technically keep to the letter, or the spirit of it, but you can break it. So you can break something, you can break a promise, So in other words, it's a technique, it's a series of rhetorical techniques to break any oath, any promise, any contract.
Mm.
Okay,
So
it's a
it's
very
literally
specific.
deception to breach contracts, and it started off, financially and commercially, and then now you're saying it could even extend politically, spiritually, metaphor, like however you need it to.
Yeah, so you can break anything. You can literally,
Right.
it's designed to break any promise, any contract, any oath. You can swear, make promises, and you can
Mm.
break them all. This is what he allows. Now, underneath of that, okay, so remember we had the ilm al-badi, the science of rhetoric, right? Now,
Yeah.
one of the other, now this is the science of rhetoric, but we've already seen it is dishonesty. It's lying. It's dishonest rhetoric. Okay.
Hmm.
Now you've got dawa, propaganda, and pretense. Pretense doesn't mean to tell the truth. It means to pretend, to lie. Hiyal is not only a form of breaking contracts, breaking promises, and making false promises, it's also a military tactic. It's
Okay.
military deception. It also
Right.
falls under the tactic. It also falls under the definition of military deception. Okay.
Mm.
And then underneath hiyal, now everyone talks about the word takia. Please do me a favor. Forget this word. Forget it. It's useless. Forget it. It's minor. Throw it away like you've never heard of it. You need to learn hiyal.
Okay.
Okay. You need to forget about takia. Stop using
Mm.
it. They've taught you to think takia, and you think in this little box, this takia box, you think in this takia box. Now, the Eskimos have like what, 20, 30, 40, 50 words for snow. Now,
Mm.
imagine the only word you know for snow is the word snow, but they've got 49 other words for snow. Maybe there's a reason they have 49 other words. You're so focused on the one word, you're missing all the rest.
Yeah.
Understand?
Wow. Yeah.
Understand? There's a lot of different forms of Islamic lying. Taqi is just one of them. It's not even the major one. It's not even the most important one. This is the big daddy.
Oh my gosh.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Because I've only been familiarized with Dakia as well. So
Of
Hiyal
course,
is a whole
they
nother
lie
thing
about
for me
lying,
to look at. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's the art
right?
of lying. They've mastered
And then
it.
within this, you have the adab al jadal. This falls under hiyal. Forget this word takia. Pretend it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
Then you have hiyal. Now, underneath you have the adab, which is sunnah. Adab technically means every Arabic word has at least three meanings. So every word means a bunch of different things.
Mm.
Adab means it's sunnah, or a way of, or a tradition. Okay,
Mm.
that's one way to think of it. Adab al jadal is disputation. So we would think of it as disputation, a
Okay.
format a format for arguing. Sorry, as I said, I spell extremely well,
Disputation.
but
Yeah.
I
Don't
type
worry.
crappy. I'm
Don't
horrible at
worry.
typing. So disputation, it's a form of arguing. Now you have the opposite. This is the opposite of logic. It is sophistry. Disputation is using sophistry. Sorry, see, I can't type.
Oh,
It's sophistry. Disputation is sophistry.
no
It is
wonder Muslims are so
specious
good at
logic.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
called captious. Okay, these people. So it's captiousness. Okay, so the term captious. Captious means someone who's going to nitpick, isolate something small and try to embellish that and focus on, you said one small thing wrong, and they'll ignore the other 99 things that are 100% correct, and they'll pick the one tiny thing they can pick at, which is exactly what they're doing. It's a method. Now understand, it's the opposite of logic. It's not designed, none of these methods, adab al-jadal, hiyal, dawa, none of these are designed to take you to the truth. None of these
True.
methods are explicitly, it's defined explicitly, these are not designed to take you to the truth. They are designed to convince.
Hmm. And they're
They're
founded
designed,
in deception. It's deception to convince, or any
correct.
means
All of them
necessary
are
to
found to be
convince. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, you have a very good understanding of this, and that's great.
Oh,
All
thank
of them
you.
are designed to convince, to persuade. They're not designed to be true. At no stage is there any emphasis within these definitions, within these doctrines about truth. It's all about persuasion. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of logic. It's entirely not designed to find truth. It is designed to persuade. Now, the final thing that I'm probably forgetting here is that, so in Western terms, the way we would best define it in Western terms is what's called heuristic dialectic.
Right.
Heuristic. Now, now you have Schopenhauer, the philosopher Schopenhauer,
Mhm.
find heuristic dialectic. So something that is heuristic, it's disputational. Dialectic is where you don't try and find the truth. It's like Marxist dialectic. Two things clash, and then you get this third form, which is not true. You know that the one is going to overpower the other and it's going to prevail. It's not like these two things clash and then you find a unity. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. No, you don't get that. You get
No.
dead bodies on the floor and you get the other guy walking away. He won, right?
Yeah.
So heuristic dialectic, think of it as propaganda. Propaganda is by definition heuristic. Right?
Okay.
It's designed to win by any means necessary. Now, he identifies 38 methods of deception, of deceptive language. He identifies 38 methods of deceptive, dishonest language designed to do nothing but win, not to find truth. So if you look at the Islamic methods of discussion, right? If you look at the Islamic methods of discussion, all of them are dishonest. They all utilize heuristic dialectic. They all utilize these 38 methods. Okay,
Right.
based on
Okay.
HEL. Heuristic dialectic, you can think of it as that HEL. So it's
Yeah.
all designed. If you study the methods that Schopenhauer discusses, you will find the very same is true. So
Okay.
so basically, Islamic HEL is a masterclass in lying and propaganda.
Yeah. So basically, Hiyal is this umbrella term or parent company, if you will, for what Islam is in terms of like, I'd say just the art of what was I going to say? I had a really nice little line for it, but basically, yeah, I can't think of it right now. But yeah, it's deception, and it is. I mean, they all come at different levels. Like as you're saying, within Hiyal, there's different concepts of this, but Hiyal encapsulates every form of deceptive tactic or like linguistic or whatever you need to do to make Islam prevail,
Yes.
whether it's militarily, politically, or as a religion. As a side note, as a religion, number 10 on its list of things.
Exactly. So let me see. So someone just mentioned in the chat there, the end justifies the means. Let me see. Someone just said it now. Mateos Rafael Negos Estefanos. He just mentioned the ends justify the means. He just stated that. Yeah. Oh, the Roaring Man said. Sorry.
I'll just
My
find it.
apologies. The
Sorry,
Roaring Man.
I'm
He said
really
the ends justify the means. Now,
okay.
it's a little further up. He does state that the ends
Oh, got it.
justify the means.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, understand this is actually true. When you look at the Sharia, you look at Islamic law, there are 6 pillars of Islamic law. There are 6 pillars within Islamic law. 2 of them are this one, al-darurat tubi al-mazurat and al-maqasid aqadu min al-wasa'il, right? Which is necessities permit the forbidden and the aims are more important than the means. These are 2 of the major pillars of the Sharia.
Wow. Okay. So it literally is a case of use whatever means necessary to justify your end and achieve your end. And we saw today a lot of that has to do with dominance and power and servitude and subordinance and subservience and punishment for everybody that doesn't fall in that category.
Yeah. So notice Idlebreaker will not engage with the content. He is constantly going to change the topic. This is sophistry. They learned this from the Greeks, from the Greek sophists. I mean, this is a more complicated discussion. That's a 2-3 hour discussion for another day to go into the actual specific details of Islamic lying. They have entire books on lying. They have entire chapters that discuss exactly how to lie, when to lie, and so on. They teach how to lie within the Sharia. It's integral. It's not only halal. Okay, it's not only right, it is obligatory.
Commanded. Yeah, commanded and obligatory, as you said. And again, Lloyd, I'm happy to park that concept of hiyal, and if you wanted to, we could even do like sometime in the future, kind of do like a deep dive into that and just go through the different versions of lying. But no, thank you so much. Are you happy to call it a day here?
Yeah, I think we can end here, but hopefully this was helpful to everyone, and I've covered a lot of external subject as well. So yeah.
No, you most definitely have. And again, I just want to say the fact that you're able to share these resources with us, or even just point us in the direction of these texts and these references, this is opening up a treasure chest of information for even people like me. So thank you so much. Trinity Matrix is saying, this is an amazing lecture by Lloyd. Everything fits so perfectly together, like a hand that fits perfectly into a glove. Thank you so much for your comment, and I'm glad that you liked it. And you guys are all benefiting from Lloyd's knowledge bank the same way I did, and I am continuing to. Trevor saying, thank you, Nuria and Lloyd, for a brilliant presentation. I focused in on what you and Lloyd was saying, not on the circus in the comments. Good night, guys, and thanks. Same here. I was completely off the comments today. I'm going to make sure this is in check for next time, because it does seem to be getting out of hand, each part that we do. But thank you so much for sticking with us in the presentation and focusing on the topic at hand. I really appreciate it. And more people like you who are actually there for the knowledge and the learnings, as opposed to just starting beef in the comments. Coco Jasmine, thank you so much. And thank you for interacting with us and all your comments along the way. That they were really interesting. I want to make sure I don't pull up any comments for you so we don't keep you much longer. Just scrolling through the end of the chat. Lloyd, is there anything you want to say in the meantime before we wrap it up?
Stay away from Islam.
Yes. That's it for sure. Stay away from Islam. It is nothing but this. As North mythology is saying, it is deception. And as Lloyd mentioned, we haven't even touched the surface of the level of deception that it is. I feel like it's too dark. Like, I'm like, do I even want to know how deep this goes? But as somebody mentioned earlier, it is time to show this political, to kind of drop the facade of this religion and just this Islamic way of life and this harmless thing where I believe in one God and I do my Islamic practices. No, there's something a lot darker bubbling under the surface, and Lloyd is literally helping us uncover that. So yeah, it's definitely got to be done.
Notice Jojo Freelancer just is using Hiyal right here. He says, Nuria, the hardest question, do you accept everything Lloyd said? Now, just notice what he's doing is he's trying to undermine what I've stated. Either they will attack me directly, right? They'll undermine my character to undermine the message. So what he's doing is he's not engaging with the content, because look, I didn't make it up. I'm showing you what is coming from their own scholarly texts. Yes. I'm showing what is coming from the best scholarly texts I can find, right? So he's saying, do you accept everything Lloyd said? Right. So he's implying that what I'm saying, but I didn't make this up. This is from Islamic scholars. This is from the best science that I can find. Right. So now, why would he question that? Does he accept this? Understand? So these are simple ways of just trying to undermine the message. So there's lots of these subtle tricks.
And also like attributing an agenda to what you're doing here just because of, maybe the worldview that you have. And again, that's what I think is not acceptable here. When there's research and there's knowledge and there's years of scholarship and material and time and effort that somebody has put together, this is just a question of like the 1 + 1 you did earlier, Lloyd. That's exactly what this is. This is facts and evidence speaking for itself, and I'm willing to take it for what it is, without having the bias of Lloyd trying to present an agenda here, which I don't think, everyone can see you're not here to present an agenda, Lloyd. You know exactly what kind of channel you're on. You know exactly what you and I have the common goal in mind to do. So yeah, to be honest, all of that stuff is getting a little bit boring, quite frankly. If you have anything to comment on the actual topic and the show at hand, and like Lloyd said, just come at him, refute him, show him sources to the contrary, because again, they're all there for you. They're listed. I'll put them in the description of this as well. And if you can't accept evidence and facts and scholarly works for what they are, then that's really not my problem. But we're here to just dissect that and shed light on anything we can in that way. But yeah, Abdi, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Bless all Eritreans. Yes, bless them all. Bless everybody. Happy Camper, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm very, very glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, feel free to be back for part 4, which we will do soon because Lloyd is busy in the next couple of weeks, as am I, but we'll definitely get something set up. Yeah, great show, guys. Use the sources freely available and check for yourself. Exactly. And thank you guys for showing Lloyd and I support as well amidst all that chaos. Thanks, Lloyd, NK. Excellent presentation, excellent presenters. We'll have to rewatch.
Farish, thank you. I'm so glad I could make this entertaining.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Lovely comment from Farish.
Yeah,
so Farish. This is my best birthday ever, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're so glad. And thank you for being here with us on your birthday, because you could have been doing anything else. But I'm glad you had a good one. John Stopman, thank you so much for being here as well. You are a constant on this channel, so thank you, thank you. And okay, criticism is expected. Sorry, this is I think what we should end on today. Like, criticism is fine and accepted. The Muslim world will get used to this. Yeah, well, let's hope so. We're kind of forcing it on them, but yeah, again, nothing to hide here. Lloyd has absolutely nothing to hide, so there we go. All right, guys, thank you so much, guys and girls, everybody watching, wherever you are, whoever you are. Yeah, Lloyd, once again, thank you. It's been over 3 hours today, so really appreciate
No
it. I
way.
want you to go
Oh
and
my.
relax. Yeah,
I had
I'm
no
so
idea.
sorry. Go
Oh my.
relax now, chill out. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, until next time, everybody, peace out and see you for part 4. Bye. Thank
Take
you,
care,
Lloyd.
guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.